Hey, everybody, welcome to Simple Songwriting episode 6. In this episode, we are talking about a really fun song, a song I wouldn't have expected, and I kind of don't think about too often, but that I actually really like a lot. It's We Didn't Start the Fire by Billy Joel. Um, Aubrey chose this one for kind of a specific purpose, and so I'll let him kind of explain what his idea behind it was.
Yeah. So basically, last episode we talked about Ariana Grande's "That Boy Is Mine," fine, whatever it, it was called.
Yeah.
Um, and we obviously picked a song that which we weren't necessarily big fans of, and was just kind of a very safe song, and in my opinion, not a very memorable song.
I think I said my
So
piece on it.
yeah, yeah.
I think I said enough.
uh, if you don't know what we're talking about, you can go back and listen to his piece.
Yeah, I
Um,
think I made my opinions on that song clear. Um,
but so when we're wrapping up that episode, we kind of were talking about the idea of picking a song that like an artist didn't really like, um, which actually was a little bit more difficult than I thought it would be, because I didn't want to just pick a song that was like an artist just is like, oh, I hate the song because I've played it live a bajillion times. Like
mhm.
coming from more of a musical standpoint rather than like a song being stale or overplayed standpoint, I
Yeah,
think was important. So
I think that's
um
actually super important because we did talk about that a little bit, like off, mic or whatever. Like it, if you listen to just about any song, you'll get tired of it. That's just annoying. Like we don't like listening to the same 3 minute thing or 4 minute thing over and over and over again. You'll do it when you first hear a song, and that's cool, and you really like the song, but every song can get stale. And so if you're a musician and you've been playing a song for 30 years, even if it's one of the best songs ever made, I think the example we were talking about with Stairway to Heaven, it's going to get old. It's going to get stale. And so, yeah, I thought, the idea, and I thought you were correct to try to find a song where the writer actually didn't like aspects of the songwriting and the song itself, not necessarily that it was stale. So yeah, I
yeah.
thought that was a really good way to go about it.
So yeah, basically I felt like "We Didn't Start the Fire" by Billy Joel was a great choice. One, because I think it's a song that a lot of people know or at least would recognize. Like, you
Mhm.
know, I feel like it's a pretty popular song. Um,
Yeah.
and I think it's worth noting too that we're going to talk about this song. I've read the articles and did all well at the articles like like I did a research paper here. No,
Mhm.
but I've like I know Billy Joel's commentary on the song itself and what he does not like about it, and Cameron does not. So
Yeah.
it'll be really interesting to see Cameron's take, who earlier said, I think off mic, was like, I really like this song, like, like blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, okay, it'll be really interesting to see what you have to say about it versus uh,
Yeah.
Billy's
I,
input.
I'm I'm super curious. I think this is gonna be really interesting because there's actually a lot of things about this song that I like. I do have some critiques, and I'll let you know what those are. But yeah, I think that I think it's just gonna be really cool because I love breaking down the songs and having my opinions and stuff. But to see what Billy Joel actually said about it I'm very excited to hear because he's great. Like he's an awesome musician, and so
Yeah. How familiar are you with his catalog in general?
I'll be honest with you, I'm really not that familiar. Like I know a lot of his songs because he's just that popular. And so it's like, and all the songs that it's funny because I don't think I could list a whole lot of them off the top of my head. But if you said, "Oh, what about this song?" I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I love that song." And
Yeah,
I feel,
yeah, yeah,
you know, but and so I know that he's written a lot of songs that I like, but I've never really gone down the Billy Joel rabbit hole and like
yeah.
committed to listening to a whole bunch of his stuff, but I can't say that I've ever listened to anything by Billy Joel that I know was from Billy Joel and that I just didn't enjoy or didn't like.
Yeah, okay. I think that's fair.
Yeah, and
Um,
I've always been yeah, and I think this song too, even listening to it, because this is one of those songs that I've heard a million times, but I never really
yeah.
paid attention. So going and listening to it just on my headphones, I don't want to. We can get into the song specifically, but just one quick note is like the percussion that starts at the beginning, just those little toms and the drums that start. I had literally never heard them before. I actually had to check to make sure I got the right song, and I went to like a different version of the song on Spotify by Billy Joel, and it was the same thing. So yeah, it was. It's funny because this song actually kind of made me want to go and listen to more Billy Joel a little bit closer. Um,
So
so
I'm quite familiar with Billy Joel. I definitely haven't listened to all of his albums, but I've definitely listened to like one. I have his greatest hits. That's like 2-part CD, and I know like his big albums, like his essential albums. Like this, I would say The Stranger is probably my favorite Billy Joel album.
mhm.
Um, Off the top of my head. Um, and you released quite a few live albums as well, which I enjoy live albums dependent upon the artist, I guess. Um,
I'm really iffy on them. I think the only two live albums I've ever enjoyed were "Diamonds in the Rough" by Avenged Sevenfold, and
mhm,
then uh, the Guns N' Roses live album, because that you could hear a lot of the stuff in the live version. Like, okay, so one of the things I like about Guns N' Roses is that their songs actually have like tons of layers, like tons and tons of layers. And sometimes when you're listening to the track, those layers get buried, just little guitar parts or piano parts and stuff. But live,
mhm,
like those parts might stick out more. And so there have been times where I've listened to a song from Guns N' Roses live and just been like, oh my God, like I never heard that bass line before. And then I'll go back and listen to the track, and sure enough, it's right there. It's just that they layer their songs a lot, and it's hard to pick things out sometimes because there's so much going on. But aside from that, I've never really been super huge on live albums.
okay. For me, I think like a live album, a lot of the ones that I enjoy are artists like from back in the day, like Frank
Mhm.
Sinatra, Elvis Presley. I actually borderline hate listening to um, just like studio recordings of them
Yeah.
because it's just kind of, I don't want to say flat, but it doesn't. It's just not the same. Like, and I think a lot of it has to just speak to just the performers that they were in, which are very different performers, but like they both have a certain swagger about them, although it's very different.
Well, and
Um,
also like when you think of like a live recording back then, it wasn't like we have it today where nowadays we treat, music almost like a painting where you can go in one day and like work on just one little section and record that or work on that and then like just keep going through it. It's like back then it was actually a recording of a live performance. And then they would just spruce it up and like do whatever re-records. And it was like that because they didn't have the bandwidth, the
yeah,
tracks. Nowadays we can literally have unlimited tracks on a song. So you can
yeah,
have unlimited layers with unlimited instruments. But back then it was like, nope, you gotta be spare with what you do. And so sometimes you'd have to record like the drums and the guitar on or the drums and the bass on one track. And so they had to nail it. They had to be great live performers. And the studio is one thing, but there's a whole different energy when you're playing in front of a crowd and a
yeah,
looseness that comes with that, especially if you're good at what you do. So that
yeah.
doesn't surprise me. Again, I don't listen to a whole lot of live stuff from like Frank Sinatra and all, but like that doesn't surprise me
That
because
makes sense.
they had to be that good.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that, but now that you say that, that makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I I also think this would be like in my top 3 karaoke song choices if I had to do karaoke. This is like a top 3 choice for me personally to perform.
Man, that there's a whole lot of lyrics. This is like rap
Well,
god. Like,
they're in front of you, they're coming at you with
yeah,
supersonic speed.
it's funny because that's almost kind of the point. too. But yeah, okay. So but yeah, so that's kind of the general vibe of today's show is we're going to talk about this song. I think maybe do you think we should talk about Billy Joel's opinion after we go through the whole song,
I think
or
so. Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
think so?
Because I don't,
Okay.
I don't want to like, yeah. Because that way it's like,
Spoil it.
I don't want to that slash like potentially, not that it would be swaying your mind, but I don't want to plant any seeds. You know.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. So yeah, we'll go through the song like normal, and then at the end we get to talk about Billy Joel's opinion of the song and just see what he said compared to what we say. And I think that'll be super fun. So yeah. But before we get into that, Aubrey, what have you been listening to this week?
Yeah. So given the, I feel like a couple of things that have happened in our political world the past couple weeks, I've been
Oh,
very much so. That's as political as I'm gonna get right there. um,
yeah.
uh, I'm listening
I've seen
to.
your swing, Joe. I know your swing.
Nope, that's too much. This is about
All right, all
music.
right, all right. I know, I know, I know. All right, no politics, no politics.
But I was talking with Bailey about this today actually. I was like, I feel like the world needs like some more punk rock. And I was like, maybe I just don't know like that it exists, but like I feel like music today isn't as like, and we talked about this last episode about like controversy and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
like the only bands that I know of as of right now uh, that kind of talk about hot topics and are just kind of like, screw the man and screw the system and whatever,
Hmm.
are like Bad Flower and Rise Against. And Bad Flower actually last week released a single that is literally called "My Teacher Has a Gun" or "Teacher with a Gun," just to paint the picture there.
Dang,
Um,
yeah.
but and Macklemore actually, I was listening to some of his stuff.
You
Just
mentioned
kind of for
him.
some fun. And he had a single that came out in May that also was very like he made a stance in that song on his political views,
Yeah.
which is fine. That's his the jam. But I was just kind of like I don't know. I've just kind of been in a fight the power mind. So those have been my
Yeah.
my two or three big artists for the week, but nothing new per se outside of the Bad Flower song.
It's funny because I've never really been like super into punk rock. But I do feel like there has been a little bit of a resurgence actually. I could give you some artists that I think are kind of like, have you heard oh, what's her name? Oh no, what's her name? She was like one of my top listened to artists in like 2021 or something. Cody, I think it was like Cody Drago or something like that. Oh my god, give me 1 second. One
You're good.
second. Okay, but then also like Cassiette. Have you heard of Cassiette?
Nope. I'm
Oh,
I'm sure that there's still probably music out there that does it. I just don't know it
I'll
well
send
as well as I wished.
I'll send you some songs because there's definitely some really cool like stuff out there
Yeah,
that you could pull from. Hold on 1 second. I think I might have found one of my playlists that
I do
has that.
also. Do you agree with me in the mindset though of like it's just not? Maybe I feel like it's not as big of a musical movement now to talk about those kinds of things.
Well, it was Cody Frost. Cody Frost, that's who it was. Um she was super cool. She had a 2022 album called Teeth. It was one of my
Hmm.
most listened to albums. Check that out, Cody Frost. Um, she's like a British or I think an Irish artist. But here's what I actually think, man. I think that we got I think that we've got burnt out on that type of music. If you go back to like, again, we're not trying to get super political, but when you go back to like the 2017, 2018, around there, where literally every single artist was making political music and political stances on things, it was like, you know, my opinion has always been I don't really care much for like, you can say whatever you want on a song, but you still have to make it good, you know? Like I've had this debate with people on like religious music. Like and again, I'm not making any stance on religion, plus or minus whatever, but I had a debate with a guy where I said that most like religious rap or religious rock just isn't very good. And not because it doesn't have anything to do with religion, you know, but it is purely that they choose very generic song structures and lyrical content, or like lyrical things. There isn't any wit or depth to it. It's usually very much just one-sided, and I feel that way with politics, where it's very easy to say like, oh, here's my lyric, I support this thing. And it's like, okay, but like, cool. What's the like? So this the and again, this is, I go back all the time on this show and talk about like purpose. Why did you write this song? And it's like there's so many things and ideas and ways to portray things to people, but like with those types of songs on the left or the right or whatever, a lot of times the purpose is just simply, I want to tell people what I believe. And it's like, all right, I mean, fine.
Well, I would say that the hook is probably them just taking a stance. Um,
Yeah.
that's going to be like, I guess, the wow factor for the audience.
And so, but I think that that exact point is what people got tired of, because what, like, remember, like every single artist, quote unquote, took a stance, like was doing things like, and celebrities too, like the Twitter. I remember whenever, uh, it was like every celebrity treated their tweets as if it was like this big thing. And again, you can think what you want about whatever, but I think everybody at some point got kind of burnt out on it, where it's like, oh, this celebrity said this thing, or they stated their opinion on this thing, and it's like, do we really care? Do I really care what blank celebrity says or thinks or tweeted about this? It's like, and it's not even that like you're even, I think what even happens is it's not so much that you think of like you're consciously thinking, do I care? It's that you just see it and then scroll past it, and then it becomes they get less clicks and less views, and so then the news organizations don't report on it. Like I remember when BuzzFeed or everyone, I mean, literally all of them, from Fox News to Huffington Post to BuzzFeed, and they were, every time anyone made a tweet, it was like, oh, Brad Pitt tweeted this or whatever, and it's like people would click, be like, oh my god, what did this person say? And now I feel like nobody cares anymore. It doesn't do it for anyone anymore. Like we've all overdosed on opinions. Does that make sense? And so it's like, I think that that's why I'm saying all of this to lead into what you were saying about, there isn't a whole lot of music that takes a stance. And I think it's because all the music, like in the like last decade in the 2010s, all the music took a stance. And now it's like, okay, but now it's almost like there's the music is kind of lifeless now. Like there's not really anything going on. At least they were taking a stance on something. Now there's just nothing. And so, yeah, I think a lot of the music today is kind of unfulfilling. But anyway, that was kind of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I can get that. Maybe everybody said their stance by now, so they can't write songs about it.
Yeah, and I think it's almost become like cliche, like, oh,
Yeah.
or I'm a musician, I think this. It's like, you know, I I mean, again, you can say that for both sides. Like there's a country artist and they'll write a song about, I stand with Trump. And then you'll have some like rapper who says like, I hate Trump or something. And it's like, or whatever, whatever the political stance is. And it's kind of just like, okay, cool. All right. Is the song good? Did you write a good song? That's all I care about. That's literally all
That's
I care
right.
about when it comes to the music. So like I
Yeah.
love listening to, I've listened to lots of songs actually that I disagree with politically, but I actually think are really awesome songs and stuff. And you know, I good music's good music, man. Like good art is good art. So, but anyway, yeah. How do we? What were we? Punk
Well,
rock. That's it.
we were talking about, yeah, what we listened to. So I was just kind of like, I feel like I was just listening to a bunch of artists that were like fight the power esque.
I don't know if I know any like fight the power recently, but I do know like more like artists that are more in the punkish, vein, a little more like that. So, um, anyway, though, but yeah, this week, let's see. Unless you had some more stuff that you had.
No, 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 no. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I honestly, this has been a very busy week for me. I haven't gotten to listen to a whole lot of stuff, but Eminem did release another song. It's called Toby. I don't know if you got the chance to listen to it. It's pretty cool. I don't think it's quite as good as Houdini. It features Big Sean and Babytron, and actually Babytron, he's like a relatively new rapper. He killed it. Like he did a great job on it. Big Sean did good as always. Eminem, obviously, that dude's ridiculous. He always kills it. But I did feel like the song was a little purposeless. Like it's cool listening to the three of them together. It's almost like three different generations of rappers, but it's just whatever. But uh, he did announce that the Death of Slim Shady comes out next Friday,
Yeah, the 17th, right? Oh, is it next Friday?
the 12th.
Oh, okay. Maybe I misread it then.
Yeah. So that's hold on. That's super exciting. But yeah, that's pretty much the only song I went out of my way to listen to this past week. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but I can't. Um, yeah, no, that's about it. So yeah. Um, okay.
iTunes has it coming out July 14th, which is a random date. What's a
Uh,
Sunday?
nah, he released July 12th on his Instagram.
What the heck?
Yeah, you can go to the Eminem Instagram and it's
I
July
believe
12th.
you. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much the my what I'm the most excited for right now. I'm extremely excited for that. Uh
No, you're right.
just
This says the 12th.
yeah. Um yeah, I can't really think that there's anything else on my radar. I think the other album that I had been kind of looking forward to was the Billie Eilish album, which we haven't really talked about a whole lot. I I think we talked about it a little bit on like the first episode. And yeah,
Yeah,
it's just okay. I mean, it's whatever. She kind of lost the grit. So, all
yeah. Womp,
right,
womp,
cool.
womp.
Well, unless you had anything else, you want to jump into this song?
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Uh, why don't you give your thoughts first? Not Billy Joel's, your
Yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's kind of funny when I think Billy Joel kind of holds a special place in my musical heart in a weird way, I guess. My uncle loves Billy Joel. He's a big Billy Joel fan. Back when
Hmm.
we were in college camp, Billy Joel came to Atlanta. My uncle doesn't live in Georgia. He lived in North Carolina at the time. um, it was the first time that Billy Joel um, had been to Georgia in like over a decade. I think he said like 13 or 14 years. So I just like bought tickets and I was like, I don't know who to go with. I don't know who will go to a Billy Joel show with me. So I asked my mom, and my mom was like, "You should see if Uncle Rich wants to go." And I was like, "All right, cool." So me and my Uncle Richard went to see Billy Joel. Um,
Cool. Yeah.
but when I think of Billy Joel, like we don't start the fire, or we didn't start the fire.
Yeah.
Like isn't even on my radar as like a Billy Joel song. Um, which is I feel like weird because I think I mean it's one of his I think more recognizable songs or most recognizable songs, but I just kind of forget that he wrote it.
Yeah.
I don't. Well, all that to say is like I think it's because I don't think it's a bad song. I don't think it's a great song. I think it's just kind of like an average. It's their song. Like when I think of Billy
Yeah.
Joel, I think of like
Piano Man.
Vienna or Piano Man or um, Scenes in an Italian Restaurant. Um,
Hmm.
but to me, it's like I wouldn't turn it off if it came on. But if I'm actively like seeking to listen to Billy Joel, this song is way on the totem pole for me.
Yeah.
Unless I'm singing karaoke, then it's number one Billy Joel song. Um,
Mhm. That's funny. Yeah.
but a little bit more about the song. So it was released in 1989. off of the Stormfront album. It was also released as a single, which is important that I think to mention. It was the third single released from the album. And
Mhm.
basically, the song uh, just kind of talks about significant events that happened between the year of 1949, which was when Billy Joel was born, and 1989, which is when the song came out. Other things I think that are just worth mentioning, since like our topic of the song is like why we like it slash why he didn't like it. Uh, it was nominated for the Grammy Award for Record of the Year, um, and it was
Mm.
his third single to reach number one in the United States Billboard's Hot 100.
Dang.
And the album itself, Stormfront, also became Billy Joel's third album to reach number one in the US.
Yeah.
um, so I think it's really interesting that this is a song that he wasn't really a big fan of, but it clearly saw a lot of success.
It, like, ignited something because I mean, he was mainly big in the '70s, right?
I don't know exactly like his most popular time frame, if I'm being honest.
When I think of Billy
Um,
Joel, I think of Piano Man. Like, Piano Man is, I think, the quintessential, like, Billy Joel song,
yeah, I think
or
a
at
lot of
least
people would agree.
yeah, and again, I'm not super familiar, but I know that that's, like, a '70s song. Wait, hold on, let me look it up, like,
I think it was
because
72 or 74.
'73.
Okay, of course, the year I didn't pick in between.
Right? Yeah, so '73, so it's like I mean, it is kinda crazy to think that you know what it makes me think of? Like, Thunderstruck. Wasn't Thunderstruck released in, like, '88 or '89 or no, like, '92, right? From AC/DC?
Yeah, it was
Um,
later than I think that we would most people would think that it was in their career.
yeah, and so, 1990, and so it's kinda interesting, like, you have this band or artist that's really popular in the '70s, and it probably had you know, he had hits in the '80s for sure, but then you get, like, this one song, 20 years after your biggest song came out, and it's just like, it blows up, it explodes, and it's kinda interesting, it's just interesting how that can happen, yeah. And this song too, we'll get into the details of it, but like this is actually a really, really weird song. It's super unconventional. So it's kind of interesting that it like, blew up the way it did.
I think, and maybe part of it has to do with the context and like things happening in the world at the time. But this is not a song that I would think would strike me as a song that should be a huge hit.
hmm
Um,
I so for me, this is the type of song, and I'll talk about this because I actually think this song maybe deserves to be as big as it is. I actually think it's a really cool song, and there's reasons for that. But I wouldn't have expected it to actually become as big as it is,
do
you
you
know?
to me, and the reason why like I'm kind of surprised it was like some big hit is it just kind of feels kind of gimmicky to me, like the song as a as itself, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. Like if like I don't know, like you know what I'm saying when I say that.
Kind of, but well, okay, so let me talk about my thoughts on it, and then you can hear what I think about it. I actually think that this song is a good example of like you know how last time I gave this whole story about Alien and essentially the idea that art can rather than telling you what happened, art can actually walk you through it and like you can be a part of that experience. For people who didn't listen to the last episode, I gave an example of Alien, the movie Alien, where at the end of it, Ripley walks around for 10 minutes through the hallways with the alarm blaring, and it's kind of boring. But that's the point, is that it's supposed to feel very tedious and tense while she avoids the alien. And most movies nowadays would not risk doing that because it would be seen as boring or tedious. And so they would just skip right through that and say like, "Oh, we we can't get back to the control room. We're gonna have to do something else." And they just wouldn't even think about doing something like that. But the point is you can have art that maybe is, I think I specifically said you can have art that kind of drones on and on and is kind of tedious, but that's the point of it. Well, I think this song actually does exactly that. You know, he is making a statement on, well, so there's twofold. One, he's making a statement on the 80s and like culture from the past, like the decades leading up to the 80s in general. But the truth is that he's really making a statement on humanity. Like he's talking about, it's actually a very all-encompassing song about the craziness of humanity and the world and how we work. And so he says, you know, we didn't start the fire, it was always burning since the world's been turning. You know, it's a very, the scope of the song is very broad, uh but he kind of he uses this never-ending list of cultural phenomenon and events and news and just whatever it is, just to kind of drive that, just to portray the craziness and all this insanity. Because I mean, I don't know all of the references that he's talking about, but you could probably go to each and every one of these words that he says, and there is like some super crazy deep story or headline that went along with it. And so yeah, so I think it's very interesting. It's a very interesting way to drive this point home about the craziness, is to kind of walk you through it. And like by the time you get to the fifth verse or whatever, you're like, Jesus, it keeps going on. But then the chorus right after the fifth verse, you know, goes and on and on and on. And so that's actually the point. And so it's kind of, I think that's super cool to do that. But yeah, so my one of my critiques, and I don't want to, you know, spoil it all my thoughts, but like one of my critiques was that the references are a little dated, and making them, you know, making the references specifically about these decades can date the song at some point. But I do think that the spirit of the song is timeless, which is this sort of like, you know, it's kind of this acknowledgement of the craziness of the world, and that you're just kind of in it, and that you have to sort of accept it at a certain point, you know. uh and so yeah, it's very, it's not like a very complicated, well, I don't want to say it's not a complicated song, it's just not a song that you would think would be like super deep or I don't know if I'm saying that right, or if I'm phrasing it, but it's essentially like I wouldn't have expected this song to. I think I said it like I wouldn't have expected this song to get as popular as it is, as it was. But I understand why. It's actually a pretty universal song. It doesn't take any political stances. It doesn't really comment on any of the things that it lists. It more just is like capturing this feeling that I think you can relate to at any decade of like, oh my God, the shit just never ends. There's just always this stuff happening, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure just us from the past decade, you know, again, we're not talking politics, but like we can relate from the past decade, our, you know, on our own. We don't need to, all of the
Well,
lyrics to line up. So
so that's a funny, I think a funny kind of thing to note here is that Fallout Boy did a "We Didn't Start the Fire" 2.0,
yeah,
um, and it took resumed at 1989 or 1990, and then brought it up to the release date of that song, which I think was last year. Yeah, 2023.
really, it was that.
Um,
Okay, yeah.
yeah. So we're at least
That's
good up until last year of our musical history lessons.
right. Well, and it's kind of funny, like, right? It's like you can do that technically. I think that's, you know, all right, whatever. If that's what they want to do, they can do it. But I do think it's funny that, like, again, the spirit of the song is timeless, but he's kind of using these dated references now to capture it. But I imagine that if he had, you know, if you were in 1989, and especially when you look at the 80s, like the 80s were kind of a wild decade. Like there was a whole lot of crazy stuff happening then. You know, sometimes we look back on the 80s, it's like, oh, you know, it's fun synth pop, but like politically, economically, like all of this stuff, the 80s were wild, man. So like I'm sure by the end of the 80s, like at 1989, having a song like this come out where he references all the crap, and imagine like you had lived through the 80s and every single one of these headlines you knew about and you spent a week talking about with your friends and your family and stuff, and then have this song and it's almost like this weird like throwback over the decades, and it takes you back. You're like, oh, I remember that. Oh, I remember Khrushchev. I remember Princess Grace. I remember Brooklyn's got a winning team. It's like I can I'm it would probably have been a very surreal and kind of exciting experience to hear a song like this. And then especially like one of the notes that I put is that at the end of this song, by the end of it, you feel both exhausted but also kind of amped up and like excited. Um because I think the song is like shoving all of this stuff down your throat, but it also is kind of telling you to accept that it just doesn't end. It's just the nature of the world, you know?
Yeah, perhaps provides a glimmer of hope.
Right. It's actually kind of an uplifting song, sort of, even though it's listing like, you know, I mean, the last verse: foreign debts, homeless vets, AIDS, crack, Bernie gets. It's like, uh, China's under martial law. Like, it's not. He's listing very serious stuff, but it's actually kind of a hopeful song of like, look, yeah, like we're all in it. Like we're all in the shit. It doesn't end. You have to kind of accept it. And I think that that's a very universal message. And so it's just very interesting that that I don't think, yeah, I don't know if I've ever quite heard a song like this. I mean, the closest might be like an Eminem song because he just will rattle off stuff, randomly, but like it's very cool. It's a very cool song, very different from other songs that I've heard. And I could see why. I can see why he might have even been surprised that it resonated with people. But when you really think about it, it's like, yeah, no, I mean, everyone can relate. Like everybody can relate at any time period. Like, oh my God, it's still going. So I like it. I like the song. I do have some critiques. I'll get into those, but like, yeah, those are my thoughts.
Yeah. Um, so I think before we break it down, now would be just a good time to remind people that we expect or assume that you have heard or listened to the song before listening to this episode. So if
Yeah,
you've not done so, now would be a good time to listen to that and then come back and resume. And
yeah,
then,
definitely.
Cam, I'll
Go.
let you start us off.
Okay, so I kind of mentioned this earlier, but when I first started this song, I didn't recognize it at first. And it's because the first thing I heard was this crazy percussion in my headphones. And so this is a motif throughout the whole song, is this wild percussion. It's like and he brings it in and out. It seems like it's sort of separate from the drum kit. It's a separate recording, but it's awesome. And it kind of one thing that I think this song does really well, and it sets it up in the intro, is creating a soundscape and like really layering things, especially the guitars. Because I feel like with the guitars, you can almost barely hear what the guitars are doing when you listen to it. Hmm.
I was going to say, yeah, I feel like the drums are definitely kind of like center stage here. And I think for the most part, they don't really change
No, I don't think so.
through the whole song. Did you watch the music video by chance?
I didn't watch the music video.
So in the music video, it took me a second to figure it out. But he's doing the Tom intro. He's like in the music video, it's a bunch of different scenes, but he's always like drumming on something like a table or like with like a pot and a pan and stuff like that. And he's doing the Tom beat throughout the entire music video. Um, so to me, it's kind of almost like the heartbeat of the song in a weird way, I guess.
Yeah, the toms are like I mean, to me, I think you're right. The toms are the main motif, and no, the drums don't change throughout the song. It's pretty much just a do ba do ba the whole time. But the toms are like they are the main motif. They are the main, and for those of you who don't know what a motif is like it's like the repeated segment kind of. It's almost like the musical theme. Think of it as like the musical theme. So like, when you think about like Sweet Child of Mine, like one of the main musical motifs of that song is that intro do da da dum da no na no, because he actually plays that, in little spots all throughout the song, but that would be considered like a musical motif. Anyway, so the toms though are great because they set up the craziness. I mean, they just sound wild, and right off the bat, just and they're wild. Listen to them on headphones because they're just going back
It
and forth between the two speakers. It's
it
Mhm.
kind of reminds me of like a tribal rhythm type thing,
Oh
campfire
yeah,
setting versus like a I guess a theoretical rock song.
100%. And that's why I was saying I think that they're separate from the drum kit. I think they actually are like separately recorded toms, and I think that's actually exactly what it's supposed to do. Is kind of it's funny. You know what connection I just made is like we didn't start the fire, and I'm sure that in his head there was like a connection between the tribal fire, like actually humans discovering fire and like you ever think about that?
Um, no, but knowing what I know his comments on the song were, I don't
Oh
like. I'll shed some light on that maybe a little bit, but that is an interesting take. Um,
yeah, I maybe I'm
and
off on that. I
he might have. Well, he doesn't explicitly in the comments that he's made. He does not explicitly address that, but
uh
having you said that, like, kind of like, oh, that makes so much sense. He's a brilliant genius, but again, kind of knowing some of the things that he did say about
okay.
the song, I'm kind of like, it's just a happy accident.
Yeah, and that's always funny too. But well, here's the thing: it's like, okay, maybe he didn't think about it, and it's a happy accident. But like, all humans know fire. Like we know fire; it's like a primal thing. And so I don't know. Maybe he didn't consciously think of it, but like he did mean to put those toms there, and he did mean to write, "We didn't start the fire." Unless, I mean, maybe he did. I don't know. I'm
I
not
was
gonna
gonna
speculate.
say, especially like given the music video, and like I said, it's literally he's playing that beat on throughout the entire thing with his hands in some way, shape, or
Yeah.
form. So that was very intentional for sure.
Yeah, I think these toms are super important. And when we talk about like writing songs with a purpose and like doing things with a purpose in a song, like this is a great example of that, where like these toms set up the tension, they set up the craziness, the tribal nature. Like it's this is about to be wild, like we're about to get a little wild. Then also you have in the background uh it honestly what is just an awesome sounding guitar. It just has tons of reverb, tons of gain. It almost sounds like a train. It's just it just sounds awesome. I love guitar sounds like that. But he's not really. It sounds like he's done a couple overdubs because it's very. You can't quite pick out exactly what he's doing. It's more of a like ambient thing. But the guitar as an instrument, the electric guitar, is a very uh, harsh, distorted sounding instrument. So even just having those little sounds there and like prepping it, it's like, okay, it's not clean. It's not a clean song, and it's not piano. It's not soft. Like this isn't like soft ambience. This is heavy, distorted ambience. This is tension. Um, so that goes on for like it actually goes on for about 6 seconds, and then it keeps going on. But then we have the main melody come in, which is the dun 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 na 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 na. And they actually do the same thing Ariana Grande did. And I mentioned it last episode, where you put the musical melody for the lyrical sections at the beginning of the song, so that when you actually get to the chorus, you've already heard the melody, so it sounds familiar to you and you recognize it. So that's pretty much what he does here. He just throws that synth melody, and the synth is really cool sounding. It's a very like big sounding synth. And it sounds kind of happy and hopeful, but it's also not like a light synth. It's very heavy. It's a very big um and then it's accented by some really cool guitar parts that in kind of flow in and out of it. And then I'm trying to think what else happens in that intro. But well, here's the thing: at 19 seconds, they keep playing the same thing, but then the drums come in, like the actual drum kit comes in. Um, And so, yeah, I guess a comment on this song as a whole is that it is a really big buildup, throughout the whole song. And I'll talk about that a little more when we get to like the verses. But this song is basically constantly building up to a certain point, which we'll get to. But yeah, this intro is like that too, where you start off with just the toms, because the toms are the main thing. Then you get the guitar coming in, and then you get the synth coming in, and then you get the drums coming in. So each of the instruments keeps building on each other, um, until finally we've got, the first verse starts at 32 seconds, but by the time we get it, it's very big. We've got this big thing going. It's like, all right, intro's sounding good, and then we kind of dropped it down into the verse. But before we get into that, uh, did you have any other comments on the intro, Aubrey?
No, it's definitely. I think I think we hit all the things like the drums. I think are a big part. I do think it's a little. I think it's like an interesting intro, which I know that's kind of like a lame, bland thing to say, but like I don't know that I've really ever heard um, an intro like this before.
Yeah, it's definitely like, well, it's weird. It's kind of, so you got these toms, right? But then the guitar. I think the thing that gets me is the guitar, because usually when you think about writing an intro for a rock song, you write a guitar riff, or you write a part, or a piano part or something. But there is none of that. The guitar is just making noise kind of in the background, but it's like it's very much intentional. Like it was very specific. Like he knew how what he was doing, and so it's super cool. It's like it's just building the tension without actually having a part that's written, which might
Yeah.
even be, and honestly, that kind of is lyrically what he does too, where he's just listing these things off. You know, you think about like most songs where they have like a vocal melody that you latch onto, but this song doesn't really have that to a certain extent. It's more
Well,
like
it's
firing stuff
it's
off.
I was gonna say it's more of that vocal talking singing that we've talked about. I think in three songs now.
Yeah,
The clutch song Ariana Grande now here of like it's musical but also kind of
right there, right
not
in
in
your
a weird
face, and
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like when you think about this song, there's no like guitar solo that you latch onto. There's no like, you know random melody. I mean, there are little things like that which we'll talk about, but most of it is kind of this big chaotic mess
Yeah.
of sound, and I think that's what the intro sets up. So yeah, it's really cool. But yeah, let's get into the verse, because I think that's where things really start to get interesting. So we come out, when we have this crazy build up, it's like, all right, whoa, like this is building, it's building, and then we drop the energy completely drops during the first verse, very abruptly. Like we just go right into it. Yeah, this was the verse is interesting because the drum beat stays the same, but all the guitars, all the synth, and the drums cut out, and you just have this. It's a little bass line. Um, and it's just following the drums, and they leave a whole lot of space for the vocals to stick out, which is very common. That's a normal thing. But he starts just rattling stuff off. I mean, I think the first verse is literally just names: Harry Truman, I'm gonna go through the lyrics real quick. So he says, Harry Truman, Doris Day, Red China, Johnny Ray, South Pacific, Walter Winchell, Joe DiMaggio, Joe McCarthy, Richard Nixon, Studebaker, Television, North Korea, South Korea, Marilyn Monroe. It's like, so I imagine if you're hearing the song for the first time, you're like, what is going on? Like, what is he doing? He's just naming things, you know? And uh yeah, I don't know. Do you remember first time you heard this song?
I don't.
Me neither.
Yeah.
This is one of those classics.
Yeah. It was probably like I probably couldn't process it quick enough. I still have a hard time processing all the things he says and
Yeah,
getting
no,
them all like articulated in my brain.
it is crazy all of the random things that he says, and it's actually very impressive the way he gets it to rhyme and flow. I have a note, uh, like it's way harder to make something like this work than you would think. This can get really, and I'm sure some people would find it annoying or dumb, but like obviously not the majority of people because it's one of the most famous songs he ever made and really one of the most famous songs ever. But like he makes this sound effortless. And in fact, he even has fun with it. I think the my favorite part is the well, what is it? The Berlin. You know what I'm talking about? London.
Yeah, Berlin Invasion or something like that.
Well, no, he's like London, Berlin. I don't know. When we get to it, I'll point it out. But he's
Yeah.
you can tell that he put the work in to like get it all to rhyme and flow, and then he memorized it to such an extent that he could actually have fun with it and like say things in a fun way. And you hear that throughout the verses where he'll like slowly build up the tension or say one word really intense and then come back to singing it softly. But this first verse was just talking about this. It's all very it's all very chill. He sings it very relatively chill. But yeah, so he does that first. I called it verse 1A because then he actually goes back to the, you know, intro again, that da na 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 na, like the musical intro, uh, for like a quick break, like 7 seconds, and then comes back to the verse. And I think that's pretty, when I was thinking about it, I was like, I think that's actually pretty smart because you want people to almost think when they're listening to the song for the first time, like, what was that? Like, is that what he's going to do? Or like, why did he just list all this stuff? You almost don't want to throw too much at them at once, or else they'll just get annoyed. So you throw it at them and then they're thinking, why did he just list all that stuff? And then he keeps listing stuff. And so he says, after that instrumental break, which is pretty much the same thing as the intro, we go to what I called verse 1B, where he says, Rosenberg's H bomb, Sugar Ray, Panmujam, Brando, the King and I, and the Catcher in the Rye. Eisenhower vaccine, England's got a new queen, Marciano, Liberace, Santayamo, goodbye. And then we jump into the chorus. Um, so yeah, I think that was actually, again, the point of this song is to kind of throw this stuff at you and overwhelm you with all the of the headlines and the news and the events that have happened. And but you don't want to do that too much. I think it's just good songwriting. You don't want to throw it all at you at once. You want to build into it, which actually, as we get into the later verses, he does start throwing it all at you at once. He does do like he almost does too much. I mean, there's five. What are there? 5 verses in the song? Four. Yeah, 5 verses. Um, so there's plenty to come. So we're not going to send it all at once. Um, so yeah, I don't know. What do you think about all of that in the first verse?
Um, I mean, again, I think it's more so like it is. I think so. I think you're right. The rhyming and the way that it is structured is great and very creative. And I actually don't think I've really taken a chance to appreciate it until you really pointed it out.
Hmm.
And how it does flow well. And like these are big words, like these are not
Oh yeah,
like some of them would be borderline hard to pronounce, I think.
yeah, they
Um,
are. I mean, even when I was just reading it, what do you say? What's that? Rosenberg's H bomb, Sugar Ray Panmoon Jam. I don't
yeah,
even know what that is, honestly.
I don't either.
Uh, I have Genius
Um,
pulled up, the lyrics pulled up on Genius in case I want to look something up. Panmunjom is a village on the North and South Korean border where negotiations between the United Nations and the communist Koreans to end the Korean War took place.
so
Uh, yeah, I mean, the countries exchanged prisoners of war, uh, and a truce was decided on a boundary between the two countries. So yeah, I mean, that was the end of the Korean War right there. I mean, and it's just this one word that I didn't know what it was.
yeah, and
Isn't that
there's quite a few references throughout the whole song that I would be like, oh, I'm gonna have to Google that significance.
right? And that's kind of, I think that's another really interesting thing about this song where it's like yes, some of these references can be a little dated, especially when we're looking at this song 30 years after it came out. But like, there's something to be said about like, okay, he's talking about stuff that we don't know about. We should look it up. Like this obviously was
Yeah.
significant back then, and you can actually learn from the song. It can actually like
Some
it can almost be like a time capsule, honestly. Like,
that's I like the time. Some show somewhere when I was learning about the song, did actually do like a special where they broke down each thing like as a show
mhm.
and gave like a little history lesson on it, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, that's
Um,
super interesting.
but
Yeah.
I would say that I'm definitely not a historian. And I definitely do not know the significance of probably the majority of these.
Yeah. But and it's funny though, because that's actually a testament to his hard work, to him being willing to do the work on this song and like put these references in and then get them to rhyme, you know? Uh so it's not easy to write something like this. And he could have just you can list anything, but he actually chose like global events from different countries. I mean, he lists a lot of stuff that looks Russian or you know, Middle Eastern, African. Just looking, I mean, Joseph Stalin, Melenkov, Nasser, and Prokofiev. I think that's what he says. I don't even know how to pronounce that. So again, I guess the main point is like this is obviously a very he's clearly educated on these subjects to some extent, and he is capable of not only pronouncing the words but also like getting them to rhyme and flow. And there was a lot of work put into this song to get this. You know what it makes me think of? It makes me think of that one painting where the whole painting is just like dots, you know? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, yes, I do.
Yeah, it's like that. We're like, okay, we're gonna make all these little dots and it's gonna take forever, but by the time you're done, it creates a really interesting painting and a picture that's more significant than the sum of its parts. And that's kind of what's going on here. Like the whole thing is meant to be, you know, where he's not taking a stance on any of these issues or events. He's more just listing them to portray the broader point of like, hey, the world's crazy. Like crazy stuff happens, you know? And so that's interesting. I just think it's really cool. And so I think he sets it up really well here. I did read that these are all of these references are in chronological order too, which is kind of
I
cool.
think, yeah, I think if not all of them, close to all of them.
Yeah. So I think that's super cool. So yeah, it's just again, I wanted to take a second and just comment on the like work ethic and the work that would have gone into this. Uh,
It's
you
I
know,
mean, it's clearly very intentional.
yeah, yeah, and so all like everything in this song, I actually feel like is very intentional, and so setting up the craziness and then listing out the craziness. One of the things I said is like show don't tell, right? When you're doing something like this, and it's like he could have easily said, since I was born the world's been a crazy place. Like, okay, cool, man, but this is such a more interesting, creative, artistic way of portraying that because you actually take the listener through the journey. um yeah, I talked on the last episode about how Ariana Grande's first song just drove me nuts the first time I heard it because the very first lyric on the album is on Eternal Sunshine is how do you know if you're in the right relationship? It's like, okay, cool. So you have no clue how to set up and it's like an artistic theme, do you? Because you just spoiled the whole theme. Imagine if you started this song, the headlines throughout my life have been crazy and I'm overwhelmed by it. Like, okay, cool, man. So yeah. Anyway, okay. So coming into the chorus essentially follows the synth melody that was established in the intro. So kind of like I said before, by doing that, we've already heard the melody, our brains are familiar with it. So now all we have to do is learn the lyrics and we'll be able to sing the chorus pretty quickly, which is kind of like one of the things that you want when you're making a poppy or it really any song, but like a pop song that you want people to sing to, you want them to get the chorus and be able to sing the chorus as fast as possible. And so he's done a lot of things really well here to set that up. Um, Musically, I think the chorus is generally about the same as the intro. They've just added the vocals. The vocals are super layered. They almost sound like a big, like almost like a crowd is chanting it. Um, all of humanity crying out, please let the headlines stop. um yeah, so I'll go through the chorus lyrics. We didn't start the fire, it was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire, no we didn't light it, but we tried to fight it. So yeah, super cool chorus. I don't know, what do you think of this one?
I think it's simple, straight, easy to the point. I mean, thematically, it fits in, right? Like, just kind of reinforcing the ever turning
Hmm.
planet that is really just a big ball of fire. I don't know that I agree with the "we tried to fight it" part.
I think that's kind of the interesting part, right? Is like, no, we didn't light it, but we tried to fight it. I'm not sure.
I also don't know that we didn't light it either.
Yeah, I think we did light it. This is, yeah. I think that last line. I mean, I think that it was always burning since the world's been turning. That's like that's the one that really sticks. But the no, we didn't light it, but we tried to fight it. I feel like every time I've sang this song, I don't really pay attention to that line too much. It's kind of ambiguous too. It's like one of those things where it's purposefully ambiguous, so you can interpret it lots of ways.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, my first question here is like, who is the we? Are we talking about we as humanity? We as the United States of America? You know,
Right.
um,
Yeah. We as our generation,
right?
um,
Yeah,
or yeah, and so I think again, I think it's purposefully left ambiguous, but it does imply something, and you can interpret it however you want. Uh, but yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe what it's saying is like, okay, we didn't light it, but we tried to fight, which means like the world's all this craziness has been happening since before we were born, and we've tried to like maybe it's like we've tried to keep up with it and like do something about it, but part of the song is kind of, I mean, you get, not to spoil it, but when you get to the end of the song, where he says, "We didn't start the fire, but when we are gone, it will still burn on and on and on and on." And so I think that's kind of the acknowledgement of like, all right, we tried to kind of fight all the craziness of humanity, but we can't. It just keeps going. Maybe that's it.
yeah. I think. I mean, the question again, and this is probably a better thing to discuss in greater detail at the end of the song.
Mhm.
Um, but like, if we're coming from the humanity perspective, um, I think even if humans were not on planet Earth, there would still be some kind of fire by whatever was here. You know, like
Yeah,
that's just kind of how.
like things would still be going crazy.
Right. Yeah.
Dinosaurs.
Yeah. There's always going to be dinosaur issues, and I mean, coming strictly from a biological perspective here, like there's always going to be something that's a problem and being hopefully resolved.
Yeah. No, it's actually very true. And so, you can interpret this, I think, a lot of ways. Like, if you want to think of it as like, oh, humanity is the fire and all the craziness of humanity, or just the nature of like the universe and existence and the way it is. Cause I mean, I think sometimes we think that like, oh, our world is safe. It's like, no, no, no. The world is a inherently harsh, brutal place. And we're very lucky that we have the luxuries that we do. Because people before us certainly did not have luxuries, and I'm talking like cavemen and stuff, lions and animals on the plains. Like it's brutal.
Tigers
Like,
and bears. Oh my.
oh my, yeah. No, like nature's brutal. Nature is not fun. Like bugs, look up bugs and what they do to each other. Like it's not fun. So it's like I think acknowledge there is an acknowledgement of like, yeah, the world is crazy, and especially humans. We're super crazy, you know. Joseph Stalin Malenkov, like, yeah, we're crazy. Like so there is this element of like, all right, we tried to fight it. But it just didn't work. So okay. Yeah, I think but in general, the chorus is super catchy. It's fun. Uh it's got that little tinge of I don't know. It's almost like nostalgia, kind of like there's a little element of nostalgia to it. Like you're just kind of letting it go, type of thing, you know. But
When you say like letting it go, do you mean maybe also kind of just like embracing the circumstances?
kind of, well, think about like the mindset that you would be in if you went to a Billy Joel concert and you were singing this song with like a crowd of people. Like we didn't start the fire, it was always burning since the world's been turning. It's like what aspect of humanity is that actually capturing? And I think it's capturing like, to me it's almost like that feeling when, no pun intended, but like that feeling when you get fired and you just throw your papers up. You just throw your papers up, or like you graduate college or something. No, not that. You get fired and you throw your papers up and you're just like, whatever. Like, okay, I'm out. Like,
Well, okay, two questions here because I
hmm,
think I know the answer. Have you ever been fired? Or are we just
no,
going off the stereotypical what TV tells us to feel when we get fired?
maybe how about this? Maybe a better way to phrase it is quitting, is when you
Uh,
quit.
okay. Have you ever? Well, yeah, you have quit. I do know that. Yeah,
Yeah, I have quit.
yeah.
And so there is this kind of relief of like, when you get pushed to the circumstances of a job that you quit, it's typically like, okay, something like I don't like this job, or something's wrong with this job, or I need to do something else. I need to move forward with my life. And it's like, okay, there is something kind of like when you actually do it, when you finally like quit, you're like, I'm done. I'm no longer a part of this company or this whatever anymore, this job anymore. There is like this relief in just being like, it's over. Like, whew, you can
Rip,
breathe.
yeah, like ripping off the band-aid kind of feeling.
Kinda. And I maybe it's a weird analogy, but it's like I think that's a similar feeling of like that this song evokes, where it's like, again, remember, like think about the actual circumstance of singing this song, like belting it out at the show. Uh, you know, looking at your
Well,
friends like, we didn't start the fire. Like,
I mean, my personal experience is having seen Billy Joel live two or three
mhm.
times now is this crap. Okay, what's the next word? I gotta keep up.
Oh yeah. Well, fair enough. But yeah, so anyway, I think there is like that element of, you know, release a little bit. Like I'm stepping away from all of this crap. Like I'm done. It's not my fault. I cannot deal with all of this. Whatever you want to call it, whatever that feeling is, I don't know what it would be. But yeah, and I think it's kind of a specific feeling too. It's a cool feeling to capture, and it does it in a fun way. So
Melancholy, maybe? Melancholy, is that the word?
yes, it's funny because like yes, I think there is like a little hint of melancholy here, uh, in it, because there is almost like you're looking at all of the circumstances and you acknowledge like, yeah, China under communist rule is pretty bad, and Stalin killed millions of people, and that sucks. That kind of makes me sad. But you know what? Like, there's nothing I can do about it. Like, I can't pay my rent. You know. So that maybe that's not exactly right, but yeah, there is this kind of. Here's the thing. Here's the thing about like good art, right? Is that you typically can't nail down exactly what it is and what it's saying, and it's usually like there's lots of different ways you can interpret it and talk about it, but without it being so broad that it's meaningless. So this clearly has like meaning, and there's a purpose to the things that he's doing, and a lot of work went into the song. But you can interpret these lyrics in a lot of different ways, and that's what's cool about it. Um, and so yeah, like I think that this is the type of song where you could sing it, maybe if you're having a bad day and you need a little pick me up or something, or you could sing it at a party. Like this could play at a party or something, and it'd be just fine. No one would feel any sadness listening to this song at all in certain circumstances, So it's just interesting. It's a very diverse chorus.
Yeah.
Um, okay, cool. I don't think I've got anything else on the chorus. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we
Tally
beat that
ho.
one. Tally ho. All right. Yeah. So then we get into the second verse, and what's interesting about the second verse is that there are no breaks. He goes through. So there's roughly 8 lines per verse. Um, per verse. There are 8 lines in each verse. And the first verse, he broke it up with like a little instrumental break, but the second verse, he doesn't. He goes full throttle. Uh, I'm going to try to say all of this. Joseph Stalin, Melenkov, Nasser, and Prokofiev, Rockefeller, Campanella, Communist Bloc, Roy Kahn, Juan Perón, Toscanini, Dacron, Dien Bien Phu Falls. I don't know what that says. Dien Bien Phu Falls, and then in quotes, rock around the clock. Einstein, James Dean, Brooklyn's Got a Winning Team, Davy Crockett, Peter Pan, Elvis Presley, Disneyland, Bardot, Budapest, Alabama, Khrushchev, Princess Grace, Peyton Place, Trouble in the Suez. We didn't start the fire. So I think again, how I said on the first verse is that he didn't want to hit you with everything all at once. Um, Now he's starting to do that. It's like you know, he's picking it up. He's pushing you a little bit further now as the listener, like how much, you got to tolerate a little bit more. One of the notes that I want to make here though, real quick, is that throughout these verses, in each verse specifically, he starts to incorporate new elements slowly. There's lots of like little sound effects and noises that he does. Like for example, when he says Brooklyn's got a winning team, there's a big crowd cheering like at a stadium for like a split second. So he's doing a lot to set the scene, and that's awesome. I love stuff like that to really immerse you in the song. Um, that's super cool. He'll also have little guitar lead-ins and stuff. Were you gonna say something?
No, 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 no.
Oh, sorry.
You're good.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, it's just really good. He's treating that's one of the benefits of having open verses musically, is that you can put layers in there, that you can put little sounds and layers, and uh you can do more with less. No, but for real, by having less sound going on in the verse uh as a whole, you can now add sounds in and continue to layer it to make it more interesting. And he does that throughout this song to keep the verses interesting. So yeah, I think it's a cool thing.
Well, I think not only just to kind of keep things interesting and refreshing, but also, um, again, as I said before, like a little bit of a palate cleanser. It's also just to give you a break, because I think this song can be legitimately distressing to listen to. Like, imagine if there was no like theoretical chorus or like any breaks in it. If he just like said, we didn't start the fire, and then just listed all these historical events, right?
Yeah. Oh god,
Because
it'd be ridiculous.
I mean, it'd be I think overwhelming and not a great song. um,
Yeah. Well, those chorus breaks are the best. Like and he puts them, there. Yes, I'm agreeing with you.
it's kind of like a nice little like, okay, catch your breath, we're going in for the next round kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, as well as I think it's worth mentioning. Interesting comparison here. I think now's a good time to mention um, that the music outside of these little musical things that he adds in and throws in here and there,
Mhm.
our music hasn't really changed.
No. uh the drums stay full throttle
Yeah.
actually, which is like,
Um,
let me okay, sorry. I was going to talk about something, but I want to talk about it later.
okay.
Um
Well, I was gonna
yeah.
say, I just think that's an interesting thing to kind of talk about as well. Kind of going back and making a connection to our last episode with Ariana Grande, who, one of our criticisms with that song was that it was just like the same thing for like the 3.5 minutes or however long the song was, with like one little thing that I can't remember exactly what it was.
The
To
pre-chorus,
Yeah,
like,
and here we are with you know this Billy Joel song, and the song is almost 5 minutes. It's 4 minutes and 48 seconds, but it
mhm.
never, to me at least, never really gets stale.
Well, so here's what's funny is that this song, I think objectively is more samey than the Ariana Grande song. But the like the Ariana Grande song, there actually are like the musical changes. The thing is that, and this is, this is a topic I've wanted to cover for a while. I don't know if this is the song to do it, but I do want to mention this, is that you can it's kind of like the difference between like a really good steak and like a basket of candy on Halloween, right? Like you
You
can
lost
like
you lost me on that one, bud.
just stick with me, just stick with me, okay?
Okay.
So when you think about like, all right, a basket of candy on Halloween is great. Like you got your Tootsie Rolls, you got your Kit Kats and all that. And they all taste really good and they're sugary and they all taste different types of flavors. Like, oh, I want a gummy bear now, or oh, I want Skittles now. And you're just going from candy to candy, right? But ultimately, you always feel kind of bloated. You don't really feel great when you eat that much candy and you get the sugar rush and then you get the sugar crash. And it's not really healthy for you. It's not really good for you anyway. But then, like, you compare that to just an amazing steak, like a filet mignon, and it's like, okay, you don't, and even like when you look at the candy, right? It's like all these bright colors and it's just visual stimulation, right? But a steak, it's just a steak. It's just a really great steak, and it just tastes amazing, and it's good. For the most part, it's good for you, and it's just awesome. And it's like you can't really replace something that's just good. Like you can't, I guess what I'm saying is you can take an Ariana Grande in the Ariana Grande song. One of the things that I complimented was like all of the little sounds and musical things that it does. But I also said that they serve literally no purpose to the meaning of the song. There's no reason for them to be there other than to keep you like stimulated. And so they put a lot, and I even said this too, they put a lot of work into that Ariana Grande song to keep it like interesting throughout the song. The problem is that the lyrical content and the musical content is ultimately very shallow and unfulfilling. Like just the things that she says and the things she talks about, they're dumb. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest, they're dumb. You compare it to something like this, where the chorus melody is great. It's not complicated. It's not complicated. It doesn't need a whole lot of flashy whistles and bells, but it's just good. It's a great melody. We da 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 da. Like that's just a great melody, lyrics and everything else aside. But then there's also all of this work that's been put into the verses and really the song as a whole, to create this momentum that keeps going throughout the song. And then you take that idea of like, okay, we've got a great chorus melody and we've got a great idea for the lyrics and like what we're gonna do with the song as like lyrically and thematically. And then we think about the musical beats and it's like we're gonna keep the exact same drum beat the whole time. And we're not really gonna have a like guitar part that stands out or anything. In fact, most of the guitar parts are gonna kind of be buried as ambience. And then it's like, so when you look at it, it's like it's this song is more samey than it is the Ariana Grande song. The same way that like that steak is, is one bite of steak isn't going to taste significantly different from the other, but there is a big difference between a gummy bear and a Kit Kat, right? But ultimately, the steak is more fulfilling and it's better for you because it's just good. Like, and you can't replace that. You can put all the bells and whistles that you want into the song to try to make it interesting and to keep people engaged. But it turns out if you just make a really good song that has, work put into it, good lyrical content, and an interesting idea and theme behind the song, people will be engaged with a 5-minute song that does the same thing over and over again perfectly fine. The problem is that it's hard to do this. You have to research the topics, you have to research these things, then you have to put them into the lyrics, and then you have to rhyme them all, and then you have to say them with emphasis, Berlin, London, and like make it actually interesting and engaging to listen to and sing if somebody wants to learn all of these words. Like it's actually hard to make something good is what I'm saying. But when you can try to manufacture something good, which is what Ariana Grande does, but they need to do all of those extra little things. It's like that meme, like I think it's the Invincible meme, like look what they have to do just to replicate a fraction of our power. It's like they have to put all that in and do all these random things in just to try to be as interesting, just to try to keep people engaged for less than 3 minutes. But if you actually put the work in and you make something good, people are more than happy to be engaged with a song for 5, 6, 7 minutes plus. And that's kind of my point. Does the
Yeah.
does candy analogy make a little more sense, or is it
I mean, I think I would have compared like filet mignon, which is a steak, to a lesser favorable steak, like a round or like a skirt hanger steak, flank steak, not
well?
compared steak to candy.
No, I don't think it works then, because then it's like comparing like this song to another
A
song that's
great piece of meat,
good.
which is a great song, and then a lesser piece of meat, which is still a song, but not as good.
Well, if we take the like food, if food is the analogy, right? And we take the whole of food as being an analogy for music, I wouldn't compare like the Ariana Grande song to a any piece of meat. Like maybe a McDonald's chicken nugget. Like I don't know. Like,
Well, first of all, there's a time
those are
and
pretty
place. Yeah, I was
good.
gonna say there's a time
Yeah,
and
but
place for McDonald's chicken nuggets.
but
Okay.
see, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not gonna give it a New York strip. I'm not giving it a burger either. Like, to me, that's what the Ariana Grande song is. It's unfulfilling. It doesn't have sustenance, and so that's why I think it's this bucket of candy. It's not doing anything for you, and it's not even really good for you. Like, it's just this kind of thing that's there, and it's colorful and it sounds nice, and it's you know maybe those little musical things that happen are interesting in the moment, but once you're done eating that bucket of candy, you ultimately feel worse than you did, and you still have to eat, a meal of sustenance, you know, at some point. So I stick by my analogy. I think it was a pretty good analogy, in fact.
Coming from a sustenance standpoint, yes, I can get behind it more now that you said the word sustenance.
Okay, fair enough.
You should have started with sustenance, maybe.
Listen. I had to. It all worked out in my head from the beginning. I just had to get there. There's a there's a method to there's a method to the madness, Aubrey.
Yeah. Yep. That's why there's two. That's why there's two of us here.
Yep. Okay. Anyway, yeah, I think there is a really good point to make though about like this song is pretty long, but it remains engaging. The song is long and repetitive, but it does remain engaging because of the theme, which is to sort of drive the point home of the repetition and how this stuff just like, you know, all of this stuff just kind of blurs together after a while. And that's a real human experience I think we have when we look at like news headlines and things that happen, events in our world. And so, yeah, it's I think being able, like, what am I saying? He tapped into that with this song, and I think that's why it's so appealing and why he can go on for 5 minutes and make it work. So that's kind of my like cap or bookend on that topic. Um, but yeah, this second verse, he doesn't take any breaks. He goes straight through the whole verse, uh, 8 lines, and then we come back to the chorus. There are no significant changes in any of the choruses until the end. So we'll just kind of skip through the choruses for now, unless you have any other points to make on those.
Nope.
Cool, cool. All right, so then we get into the third verse. Now, the third verse is interesting because now this is where it could start to get stale, but he's very smart and he knows what he's doing on this song. So the third verse actually starts with some held out power chords on the guitar, and he sings very heavily. Uh, Little Rock, Pasternak. So it's Little Rock, Pasternak, Mickey Mantle, Kerouac, Nick Chanlan, Bridge on the River Kwai, maybe. Oh, Chow and Lai, Bridge on the River Kwai, Lebanon, Charles de Gaulle, California, Baseball, Starkweather, Homicide, Children of the Thalim, Thalim. How do you say that? What is that?
Thalidomide?
Thalidomide. Yes, Starkweather, Homicide, Children of Thalidomide. Yeah. So he's singing this part super heavy. He's like, I mean, he's like screaming it. You know,
Yeah, there's a lot of gusto here. I don't know. I feel like heavy might give the wrong description, but I think with some energy might be a better descriptor.
yeah, yeah. Let me clarify. I'm not talking heavy in terms of like metal terms. I mean more of like you said, it's more intense. So we've got this
Energetic.
power. Yeah, yeah. And so it's very and he is okay, and he is technically screaming it. It's just not like metal screaming. Like that word screaming has an association of
Right.
like, so I'm talking more of like literal scream, like Lebanon, Charles de Gaulle, California, baseball, you know, like actually a regular human scream. And so he's yelling it. That's a better way to put it.
That's what I was gonna say. That's funny.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's very interesting because it's very different than the first two verses, which were pretty tame. In fact, the first verse starts off very tame. Harry Truman, Doris Day, Red China, Johnny Ray. He starts it off really, really soft. Kind of almost like Beatles esque. That's what I was thinking when I first heard it. So yeah, this third verse keeps things different. He switches it up, goes heavy with the power chords and all that, and then he brings it uh, back down to soft stuff. Buddy Holly, Ben Hur, Space Monkey Mafia. Um, and I want to note real quick. Oh, I missed a part. So yeah, he does this heavy verse. He does those 4 lines that end with "Children of Thalidomide," which I'm curious. What is that? I want to know. I've never heard that word before. I'm usually pretty good with like knowing things. A drug developed to manage the symptoms of morning sickness during pregnancy. Oh, wow. Uh, Thalidomide became available over the counter in Germany. The drug caused between 5,000 and 7,000 infants to be born with malformed limbs, and only 40 of the children survived. Okay. Wow. That's intense. Anyway, so that no wonder he's screaming that. In fact, if I had to guess, you could probably look up most of these things, and well, maybe not California baseball. I don't know, but after he says that, after the children of thalidomide, which he says very intensely, we go into a quick little 5-second instrumental break in the middle of the third verse, which is it's unique. It's completely unique to this section. It's like dun, 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 and it's sounds really cool. It's kind of like an interesting spot to put it in, and then he continues on with the verse. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that little break? Uh,
I mean, nothing other than what you kind of already said. I think, again, it just kind of um,
Breaks it up.
breaks it up. gives us kind of a relief of the tension or the energy that we're building.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I don't think
Y-
it's nothing super crazy. It's just kind of there.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like we talked about this on the ACDC episode, Hell's Bells, and it's one of those sections I think where you can you could miss this. Like you could miss that little break if you're just listening to it. Maybe you've heard it and you'll know it's coming, but maybe you didn't. I think there's a lot of people who have never thought about it and never thought about like, oh, the band had to very intentionally put that there and like write it and say, yeah, we want like just a quick little break there. And so already like this third verse, they've done a few things different with the first half of it being heavy and then having this little instrumental break and then coming back down into the normal verse sound where it goes back kind of to the first and second verse vocal tone where he's kind of singing a little more happier. Buddy Holly, Ben Hur, Space Monkey Mafia, Hula Hoops Castro. So yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting third verse, and it's actually like one of my favorite parts because it shows that he understands pacing and timing and stuff. And I just really like that because he keeps it interesting. But now, before it gets too soft, so you think, okay, we're back down to soft. He actually like. So let me read all the lyrics for this third verse just from the start. Little Rock, Pasternak, Mickey Mantle, Kerouac, Sputnik, Chow and Lai. Oh, I already read that part. So he ends that with Children of thalidomide. I'm going to stop saying that word. So then when he comes back to the soft lyrics, he says, Buddy Holly, Ben Hur, Space Monkey Mafia, Hula Hoops, Castro, Edsel is a no go. U2, Sigmund Rhee, Payola, and Kennedy. Chubby Checker, Psycho, Belgians in the condo, weed in his at the fire. So, a few things to note here. What I was just about to say was he starts to pick this verse up when he goes clean on the Buddy Holly Ben Hur Space Monkey Mafia. He only keeps it clean for a few seconds for those two lines. Edsel Castro Edsel or Hula Hoops Castro Edsel is a no go, and then he says like U2 Sigmund Rhee, and he brings it back up to being intense. So the reason why I'm stressing this so much, and I know I've probably just lost people, basically what I wanted to say is that he is being very deliberate and smart with the intensity of his vocals and with the flow of this third verse to keep it interesting without doing anything that's necessarily like crazy or different like or too like out there. So like just by changing the tone of your voice to become more intense, which makes sense with the theme of the song because at some point you got to start to get frustrated with this stuff, you know? And if anything, maybe the reason why they put that instrumental break there is because those things that they were talking about, like the Starkweather homicide, children of thalidomide, like that's where you start to get frustrated. And then the instrumental break is like, okay, just relax. It's all good. And then they keep hitting you with the headlines and you get frustrated again. And maybe that's part of what he was going for there. Whether he meant to do it or not, that's I think that's an interpretation that you can take. Um, so yeah, I'm just all of this is just compliment the dynamics that he went with on this. It's not easy, and it was definitely intentional. He could have just said all of these lyrics very softly and fun, like the first and second verse, but he intentionally didn't do it to keep it interesting, to build the tension, to move the song forward and keep the listener engaged. So that was a whole big rant. I'm gonna take some water. But do you have anything on any of that?
Um, no, but at this point, I think it's worth mentioning that I think regardless of almost any religious, cultural, political stance, um, the song does a good job of probably striking a chord with almost anybody from any well, I won't say any background, but most backgrounds. Like I think that you could pick almost anybody off the side of the street at this in this day, well, in that day and age, and like somebody's gonna be like, oh yeah, like get
Mm,
riled up about a part of the song lyrically, or as
Yeah.
like a topic at least.
Yeah, exactly. I think there is a that universal component to the song is really eh, I think that is the appeal. I think that's what why people like this song.
Like, yeah, like I think it may be almost in a sense, we kind of talked about, and this is just kind of me reflecting on the lyrics a little bit more now that we're breaking them down. Of like, in a sense, maybe can bring you slash us together in a way, like finding a common issue here,
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it'd be really hard to going back to that children of thalidomide line where it's like, a pharmaceutical company released this drug that caused defects or deformations in children. Like, I think it'd be really hard to not find somebody that you can like agree on that with, you know?
Yeah.
And so
Um,
there is this, but even in, I think maybe what you were saying, correct me if I'm wrong, was that even if there's like topics that are brought up here that people might have different opinions on, or like one topic might be something that frustrates one person, or another topic would frustrate somebody else or make somebody else feel some type of way. Like this song does a good job of kind of bringing them all together.
yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. I don't think that's something that, like, I mean, crap, even at like some of the shows that we've gone to, like, um,
I think it's
you
really hard to
know,
do that.
it is like I feel like if you go to a metal show, like we'll just say a metal show, because I think, ironically enough, I like to say that mosh pits are the most dangerously safe place you can be in simultaneously.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, there's a divide in, I think, a lot of crowds, and that could be for a handful of reasons. In the sense of like, if the opening band, if you had people there, um, that were just there to see the opening band, but like some of the, dang it, I was gonna try really hard to not say the Avenged Sevenfold tour, but you
It's you
know,
this time. You
it
did it.
is. I was really trying to avoid it, but I think on both legs. So we saw them on leg 2 and leg 3 of their most recent tour.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, they had Kim Dracula and Falling in Reverse. Um, Falling in Reverse can be a little of a controversial band slash topic for a lot of people.
I think
But
both of those artists are divisive
yeah, and so I
for
guess my
different
point being is
reasons.
like there were people at the second leg of this tour who were just there to see Falling in Reverse, like didn't care about Kim Dracula or Avenged Sevenfold.
Right.
Um, but they stayed for Vince Sevenfold because like they spent money and they probably know a couple of like the older songs and don't really care about the newest album.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think when you look at leg 3, where they had Poppy and Sullivan King, and I was just kind of like, holy crap, I can't wait for these. I enjoyed Sullivan King, but Poppy, oh my god, I was like, this is, and I'm not
I sat
knocking
down.
her. I'm
I
I'm not
sat
knocking
down.
her as an artist, but like that was just so far not up my alley that it's not even funny. And I think it was for a lot of people. That's Poppy definitely had some fans there. She definitely has a following, clearly. But holy crap,
Yeah,
I
we've got like
was
this trend going on right now where like there's all these girl metal stars and there's nothing wrong with that inherently, but they all seem to kind of be doing a similar thing. I will give Poppy some credit, like at least she seems to be doing something slightly unique with her like
she's different.
AI girl thing. But yeah, a lot of them are kind of doing this similar thing where it's like, I'm a sweet little girl, but I scream. And it's like, okay, all right, whatever. And I
Um,
think it just gets old after a while. And yeah, I even it's funny because I just said Poppy's doing something a little bit different, but she's actually doing that too. I'm a sweet little cute little girl, but I scream. And it's like,
yeah.
okay, like wow,
Um,
you went soft and then heavy. Like,
but kind
yeah.
of like, and not even just that, but just kind of like, I don't really feel like the vast majority of the Poppy fans would hang out with the vast majority of um, Avenged Sevenfold fans after the show. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I didn't feel like most of the people that I saw that were like decked out in Poppy gear were people that I don't think we would hang out with. And
Remember
that's just
the
like that. Go ahead.
or
Sorry.
what was that one guy with the cape? There's a guy
Yes,
with the
that's
poppy shirt.
one. That's yes, that is exactly who I'm thinking of. And I was
The
like, and that's fine. That's him, right? Like he's there to enjoy his show, and like that's what you should do. That's the purpose of a show.
Mhm.
But I felt like there were just kind of different posses in a sense. Like you had the Avenged Sevenfold posse, you had the Poppy posse, and the Sullivan King posse, and like I
Yeah.
think we all kind of like almost subconsciously stuck with our groups
Oh,
and
yeah.
didn't really socialize outside of that. Um, Whereas I feel like this is a song that can maybe kind of, again, I think it's hard to do to appeal or be able to relate to a wide audience. I don't want to say almost everybody, but I think, you know, he hits a topic that somebody can be like, oh, I know about that, you know?
Well, yeah, I think everybody can at least pick up on some of these, you know, some of these references or some of these things, right? And so you know, like if you talk about like Peter Pan, Elvis Presley, Disneyland, it's like, yeah, I know what those three things are. But then if he says Princess Grace, Peyton Place, Trouble in the Suez, I don't know what those three things are. But there is probably some person out there, some historian, who would be like, "How do you not know about Peyton Place?" And it's like, I don't know what that is. Uh, and so it there's this interesting. I think what you said is very uh, correct. Where like you have to know something on this song. Like you have to. I mean, if you don't know anything in any of this song, then like it's funny because he'll even say things like foreign debts, homeless vets. It's like that's not even a specific topic. That's just like that isn't a time specific event. That is a broad issue that he is addressing.
Is still, so he's addressing it all those years ago, still an issue today.
Yeah, and it's timeless. Like there will be the truth is that there will be homeless vets for all time. Like unless we somehow work something out, I don't know, far future, we've got it all figured out, everyone's good. No wars, no homeless, whatever. For the foreseeable future, there will always be veterans who come back from a war, and maybe mentally they have trouble or something. That's very tragic, but they end up being homeless. And so the fact that he would say the words "homeless vets," like you, at some point, you have that's something that anyone can relate to at any time. So even if some of the references are dated, I think there's something here for everybody to understand and to you know pick up on. So
Yeah.
it's just yeah. And it's funny because you think like, oh, how can I write a song that unifies people? And typically what you want to go to or what people will go to is like one idea or one concept, like love. Like that's the big one. If you write a song about love, everyone relates to love because everybody either is in love or wants to be in love or wants to be loved or whatever. Love is kind of that topic. But like the truth is that there is something kind of generic when it comes to songs about love. Like in my opinion, you have to be very careful when you're taking like one topic. And if it was that, maybe let me phrase it like this: everyone writes songs about love. So if you're going to write a song about love that's actually going to stand out and be unique to people, you've got to really go out of your way to do it. So trying to relate to a lot of people and keep people interested in your song is, you can take that approach of like making a simple topic, but just know that everybody else is going to take a simple topic. What Billy Joel decided to do is kind of like the opposite. And he took the machine gun approach where he is going to list every topic and you're going to relate with one of them. So I think that's kind of funny. Um, but yeah, it's, yeah, definitely. I think that is the spirit of the song, though. Everyone can relate to this to some extent. So cool stuff.
Yep. Tally ho.
On we go. All right, so yeah, that third verse, super cool. I really like that third verse. All right, verse 4 comes in though. Uh Hemingway, so I'm just gonna say the words Hemingway, Eichmann, Stranger in a Strange Land, Dylan, Berlin, Bay of Pigs Invasion, Lawrence of Arabia, British Beatlemania, Ole Miss, John Glenn, Liston Beats Patterson, Pope Paul, Malcolm X, British politician sex, JFK, blown away. What else do I have to say? So I didn't realize this until just now when I was reading it. This is really interesting what he did here with this fourth verse. It's 6 lines instead of 8, but he seems to actually treat it more like 4 lines and then an additional 2 lines, if that makes sense. So,
He
like
he wrote a haiku.
a haiku. What's the syllable thing
I don't
on
know off the top of my head.
that Shakespeare did? Apparently, like everything Shakespeare wrote was in like onomatopoeia, not onomatopoeia, but whatever the word is. I can't remember. Anyway, so this is cool. So this is actually like a shortened verse. Um, it's only 6 lines compared to the 8 lines of the others, but again, he treats it like a four, like the 4 lines. But then, so it's like Hemingway, I'm Dylan, Berlin, Bay of Pigs Invasion. Yeah, and so what he does there is he actually really emphasizes the 2 lines that are added on. Pope Paul, Malcolm X, British politician sex, JFK, blown away. What else do I have to say? Um, so that's first off the JFK assassination. That's what he's referencing, which was a unbelievable moment in American politics. The assassination of a president. That's crazy. Um, yeah, and so this is really again just building this tension, and I think by making it 6 lines you throw the listener off a little bit, like you're used to hearing the 8 lines, but he shortens it again. So maybe let's take it a step back. He knows that at this point in the song, this is now the fourth verse. If he wants to keep people interested, he's got to make sure that he keeps it like he has to be
He's got
careful.
to he's got to pull out some razzle and dazzle.
Right. Like he's got, well, he's walking a very fine line now of like, okay, everyone's with you still, but like, where's this going? And is this going like, think about it like this. If you're the listener, am I still engaged or am I losing the engagement, and what can he do to keep it just a little bit longer, because he's still driving the point home, he's still overwhelming the listener. And it's almost like a roller coaster or something. It's like, how much can you get away with on the roller coaster, like how much, before the person just wants to get off. Where's that line between like, this is fun and I'm having fun and it's kind of way crazy and wild, and then
Yeah.
like, okay, this is going on too long and it's stressing me out you
I was
know
gonna say that not even necessarily stressing you out, but you can only go through so many loops and or up and down hills before you're kind of like, okay, I
Mhm.
need something different.
Right. And I think that's why he actually, again, the words he chooses and the topics he chooses are important. Like mentioning British politician sex. It's like that's kind of an ambiguous one. I'm sure it's related to a specific incident in British politics, but like just the fact that he said the word sex it is a ear catching word. I think that sounds kind of weird, but it does catch your ear. And then to mention the JFK blown away, what else do I have to say? It's like he's not he's not making a stance on anything, but it is like that was a huge topic, and so it's like, oh wow, he's actually talking about serious stuff now, or like he's going there you know so it's sorry, what were
Yeah,
you gonna say?
no, I was gonna say. I mean, it's definitely not. I think it's also worth mentioning too. Like this starts off kind of mellow and builds again, which I think you kind of said already. But like, it, it's like we had just gotten off of our high energy, mellow out for a little bit, come back in, mellow out, and then end on another high note of like high energy.
Hmm. Yeah, this one specifically, like when I first listened to the song, the JFK blown away, what else do I have to say, was it really caught my ear, like it really stuck out. especially the delivery of it. Again, he's like yelling it. He's like yelling it at you. It's very so we talked a lot in the third verse about all the things that he was doing to keep it interesting. This fourth verse, he's still keeping it interesting without like necessarily changing the section or like adding a new section or something. It's it's just the delivery of his vocals and then simple structure. So the fact that he added just those two lines makes it the verse go by faster, but then by making those two lines impactful and like addressing serious topics, it's like, oh, they really kind of stand out. And so then we can jump right back into the chorus. Um and then also him saying like, what else do I have to say? I think that's kind of let me check real quick, but I think that's actually the first time. Oh, he did say goodbye, Santayana goodbye at the end of the first verse, but like I don't know that you can interpret that different ways. But this is the first time where he's actually like kind of stating it clear, like speaking to the listener, if that makes sense. So he's been listing this stuff off, and so this might be his the point where he is saying like, do you get it yet? Like, what else do I have to say? Do you get the message of the song yet? And I think that's kind of fun. I think that's kind of cool. Like, because when you think back to the first verse, right, where there's this general sense of confusion when he just starts rattling off names, so much so that he put an instrumental break there so you could just take a second and think like, what is he doing? And then he keeps going, and then he keeps going and going and going, and then finally this is the first time he actually addresses the listener and he's like, JFK blown away, what else do I have to say? Like, do you get it? Do you get the point of the song yet? Like, I think that's actually smart. Like it's because you're letting the listener figure it out. You're letting the listener think about, because if you're listening to the song for the first time, you're not going to pick up on every reference, and in fact at some point that's going to kind of blur over mentally. But if the chorus is catchy and you'll keep singing it because it's fun and the song is engaging because of all these little things that he's doing, but then we get to this point and it's kind of funny because it's like that will like I think the way that he says it sticks out so much, you have to pay attention. It almost kind of like if you are kind of glossing over these verses, JFK blown away, what else do I have to say? Like that will wake you back up. And uh it's kind of like a way of getting your brain started again. Like, hey, figure it out. Figure out what I'm trying to tell you. I'm not going to tell you explicitly, you know? So I like that. I think it's fun. I think it's a fun thing to keep that fourth verse interesting and just to address the listener and actually talk to them. So that was a big old rant, but yeah.
I think that's part of too what prevents it from going stale. It's almost kind of like a call of action in a sense.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And I think let's run right into verse 5 too. So because I think verse 5 is kind of interesting because he says you would almost think that it would end at verse 5 when he says, what else do I have to say? We didn't start the fire. And if you're paying attention to the song and you're engaged with it, you might actually think, yeah, what else does he have to say? But then he's going birth control, Ho Chi Minh. So I'm gonna say the fifth verse. I'm gonna say all the words so that we can keep track. But birth control, Ho Chi Minh, Richard Nixon back again, moonshot, Woodstock, Watergate, punk rock, Begin, Reagan, Palestine, terror on the airline, Ayatollahs in Iran, Russians in Afghanistan, Wheel of Fortune, Sally Ride, heavy metal, suicide, foreign debts, homeless vets, AIDS, crack, Bernie gets, hypodermics on the shore, China's under martial law, rock and roller, cola wars, I can't take it anymore. We didn't start the fire. Okay, so that's the lyrics of the fifth verse. The reason why I wanted to get to move over to the fifth verse is because the fourth one ends with him saying, like, what else do I have to say? You know, like, do you get it yet? And then, it's funny now that I'm thinking more about it, I'm actually liking it even more because he's actually addressing the listener. And you can actually relate to him there. He's like, man, yeah, what else do you have to say? But then by the time you get to this fifth verse and he ends it with, you know, rock and roller, cola wars, I can't take it anymore. Now you're actually relating to him. So at the beginning of the song, you're completely confused by what he's doing. Over time, it starts to build and maybe you start to get it. And then he finally addresses you in the fourth verse and says, like, what else do I have to say? And then when you get to the fifth verse, you're actually with him on it. Like he's brought you on the journey. Like you understand what he's doing now. And if you didn't, he's kind of made it clear. If you don't get it after that, then I don't know. You got to think harder about the song. But but then you go on this fifth verse and now you're with him, and by the time he says I can't take it anymore, you get it and you're with it. And so I think that's just, I don't know. I think that's smart. That's a good way of phrasing it, where it's like, okay, you bring the listener along for the ride, and then the final point of these verses is like, I'm done. I can't take it. Like there's too much. There's too much to talk about. Just when I thought like, what else do I have to say? There's still so much more to say. So yeah. What, before we go into the next part, did you have any notes on this?
No, I think you pretty much hit all the things.
Yeah. And I think another like last thing on this fifth verse, and then we'll move on. This is quick. Is these are all? I think these are. This fifth verse is kind of the most like sporadic. I feel like Wheel of Fortune, Sally Ride, heavy metal, suicide, foreign debts, homeless vets, AIDS, crack, Bernie gets. It's like he's so much just in those two lines alone get thrown at you. Um, you know, hypodermics on the shore, China's under martial law, rock and roller, cola wars. I can't take it anymore. I think that cola wars is funny. Is that literally
It's like
referencing Pepsi
I,
Cola?
I'm pretty sure. I can't say with 100% certainty, but that's the only Cola War that I know of.
Let me see. Yeah, yeah. Both of them put high profile celebrities at the helm of their marketing campaigns. uh yeah, I mean, I think that's like a perfect example of like what a silly thing. What a silly thing. And I think it's funny that that would be the last thing that he lists. It's like that's the deal breaker for him, is the cola wars. um anyway, I just felt like this verse, right when you think, okay, we're out after JFK getting blown away, what else do I have to say? It's like, no, no, we're back in cola wars, let's go. So I think it's just kind of funny. um okay. So yeah, the point of the verses is to overwhelm you, and by the time you get to the end of the fifth verse, which I don't even know if I've ever heard another song with five verses, to be fair. Um,
Probably not one that's this short.
yeah, yeah,
Which is
that's
this is
very
not a
true.
short song, but like it's a lot easier to fit five verses in a 7-10, you
El-
know,
11-minute song, but
right,
yeah,
than it is a song that's under 5 minutes. Like this is faster than a verse a minute.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So it definitely a unique structure, with all these verses and choruses. But then we get to this chorus here. It's not the last chorus. It's like the last, I would consider it the last like real chorus, and then we have the fade out chorus. But this last chorus changes it up. After he says, I can't take it anymore, the last chorus goes, we didn't start the fire. It was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire. But when we are gone, it will still burn on and on and on and on. And they say on and on and on for a while. And so I think that that's the climax of the song to me. That is the point where like, I understand this song now. And so that point of like, but when we are gone, it will still burn on and on and on. Like the point of this song, the whole thing has been to kind of let go a little bit of all of this news, or not even let go, but like accept it to a degree, and like understand it, and understand that it's a part of it. Like we didn't start this. It's always been burning since the world's been turning. All this crazy stuff has always been happening, and it's going to continue to happen when you die, and like after you are gone. And that's what he says there. When we're gone, it will still keep going. And so there's something like, I think when we get to that part, there's almost like a relief. There's a relief aspect to it. Um, like
Yeah, I would definitely say that, like, and I've never thought of this song this way before until we did this actually, of kind of like, oh, you're kind of like, okay, like I had this conversation um a while ago with my father-in-law of like, did we feel like certain things that are a big deal now, like, does that happen with every generation in the sense, and then you look back on it, it's kind of like, oh, like that wasn't that big of a deal, like as we thought.
mhm,
And like the instance that I used or that we talked about specifically was like the internet and Y2K. And then
yeah,
like the things happened, and then in hindsight,
it
not a
wasn't
big
that
deal.
bad.
Or we
Yeah.
worked through it kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So I think it's easy to obviously be caught up in the moment and all the things that are happening around the world. But like so far,
We're still
it
here.
still burns on and on and on.
Yeah, it just keeps going. Yeah, and I think, I mean, God forbid there's ever a point where, yeah, humanity just ends and it's no longer burning on and on. But like,
Well, it'll still burn on without us. In the
yeah,
words of Jeff Goldblum, life finds a way. And that
very
life
true.
does not mean that it is the human life. It could be
Very true.
just at the cellular level.
There would
So,
be bacteria, little
yeah.
amoebas. Yeah, no. So, but coming back to this, I think this is really where the song nails its point, and where you understand that it's like, especially that, but when we are gone, it will still burn on. Like that's really impactful, and you can almost kind of miss it if you're listening to the song. Uh, like if you're not really paying attention, if you're just kind of glossing over, like I said, like the point is to kind of let go of all of these things to a certain extent, let go of them, accept them, and that it's going to always keep going. It's never going to end. You can get caught up in the drama forever, but like that's just the nature of the world. And there's again, I keep saying let go, and there is that, but there is like acceptance too, like not letting it go,
I was
just
going to
accepting
say,
that that's what it is.
I think it's more of like a embrace it rather than like a let go per se.
Well, and maybe that's okay. So I'm so glad you just said that, because that I think that's actually a really good point to make, because you can have different interpretations of this depending on who you are, or how this song is like affecting you, or what you think about this song. Because it could be, you could have somebody that's like, just let go of it all, just just don't think about any of it anymore. Or then you could have somebody that maybe just is like, yep, that's just the way it is, there's nothing I can do about it, I've just accepted it. Or you could have somebody that says, yep, the world's crazy and I love it, and I just love how crazy it is, I embrace all the craziness, there's nothing you can do about it, it's always just going to be like that, but that's just the way the world is, and I love it. So there's these different perspectives, but they can all take like the same, they can take different meanings and interpretations from this song without it necessarily being a misinterpretation of the song. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think everything you just said, like when you said accept it, to me, I was kind of lumping that in with embrace it. But I guess embracing it can also just be like enjoy the ride kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think all three of those stances are appropriate.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that I said it at the beginning. I understand why this song got popular, or I could see why it would resonate with people. There is this kind of universal message here, and it's very specific. It's specifically about the craziness of the world, and how you deal with it. Um, and I think it's something everyone deals with, and so this song captured it really well. I mean, literally to the point where, like, by the end you're like, I can't take it anymore. Like, stop saying things, stop talking about stuff, and I think that's brilliant. I actually think it's brilliant, and so I can see why this song appealed to so many people. I think I just it's such a weird song. I mean, not many songs have 5 verses and like however many choruses. Like there's probably what 10 choruses in this song. I mean, how many times do they say we didn't start the fire and yet it just keeps going. Like it's just, or people will keep listening to it. People love
Much,
it.
much like the fire, it too never ends.
Yeah, right. So yeah, after that last chorus, or after that chorus, after the fifth verse, they just keep repeating the chorus. It fades out. There is a really nice. It sounds mostly like the chorus is being sang by the background vocals on the fade out. Billy Joel comes in for a few lines, but it does sound like there's a really nice harmony from a female vocal. Actually, let me check that real quick because I can't remember if it's a harmony or like a background vocal. Hold on 1 second.
Just to fill the void here while you're searching. I didn't even think it was a female voice, if I'm being honest.
It might have. Okay, so I just found it. It might have been a female vocal, but it's like we didn't start the fire. It's something like that in the background. That I think is really great. It gives it a very celebratory feel. And so I think that that's something to note as well as like the end of the song definitely sounds like a party. It sounds like a celebration. Um, and I, yeah, like you've taken all of this crazy stuff and you've sort of accepted it, and you're still just gonna, you know, like you said, you can embrace it, you can interpret it however you want, but at the end of the day, we're gonna have fun with this song. So, and I think that Billy Joel's intention was for people to embrace or accept to some extent like all of this stuff that happens, and still continue to live their best lives or whatever. But yeah, it might not be a female vocal, but it is. But yeah, it's just a little like yeah in between the lines, which is fun. It's whatever. And then yeah, the chorus just fades out. So there we go. Actually, wait, sorry. I just remembered
Yep.
one thing. One thing that I wanted to note that I didn't talk about too much, I don't think, is the way that the music keeps building in each verse. So if you listen to the first verse and then you compare it to the fifth verse, it's completely different. The fifth verse specifically has the percussion that we mentioned in the first verse or at the beginning. The percussion is playing all throughout the fifth verse. I think the fourth verse, there's lots of little guitar sounds and lead-ins and noises and stuff. The fifth verse keeps those guitar sounds, but also layers on that percussion. So yeah, just going through the flow of things, the first verse is very tame, super soft, super light, very empty. The second verse is still kind of tame. I think there's a few small guitar sounds, but like it's more about like actually getting through the full 8 lines and hitting the listener with all of that. The third verse, very heavy, or yeah, very heavy, much more intense. We got power chords in the first half, all of that. He starts to yell. The fourth verse, he shortens it down to 6 lines. There's guitar sounds in the background, and then he really shouts out the last few lines about JFK. And then the fifth verse, we bring in the percussion and the guitar sounds, which it just makes it sound huge and full, and like the energy is still rising. And then we finish with him yelling, and so by the time we actually come into the chorus from the fifth verse, musically, it's actually not too much different. Um, I think it sounds way more different because he cuts out the music at the end of the fifth verse when he says like I can't take it anymore. But yeah, I just want to note the musical changes that happen in each verse because I think they're really smart, and really well done, and continue that building of the song. So okay, I think that's everything. I think that's everything that I had.
All right. Now we have good old Billy's input. Um, so I just have like a couple blurbs rather than like reading you this whole big thing. Not that it was super long.
Yeah,
But he has
I can't wait. Yeah.
he has said that this is one of the worst melodies I have ever written. He has said
Really?
it's not much of a song and is terrible. Um, Most of the verses feature monotonous musical choices that Joel never felt particularly proud about.
Wait, hold on.
Um,
Say that again?
it features monotones, like the verses are monotone.
Oh, yeah.
Um, he Joel compares he compared it to his song "The Longest Time" unfavorably in its melodic content, saying that again he still didn't feel like it was much of a song. If you just take the melody by itself, it's terrible and it sounds like a drill at the dentist.
Wow.
Again, mentioning the song was nominated for Grammy Award for the Record of the Year and
Yeah.
was a single and um, reached the number one in the United States Billboard's Hot 100.
Yeah. That's
Um,
it's a pretty strong take from him. Are there more?
no, the other thing that I do think is worth interesting um, is that he talks about when he was kind of like writing the song, he wrote all the lyrics first and all the music was an afterthought.
Definitely. I could totally
Um,
see that.
yeah, I think that's like how you have to kind of write a song like this, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, something like this, he had to have a vision for the lyrics.
Yeah, which I would say, obviously in your and I's experiences of writing music, um, one, I've never tried to write lyrics. I just find it incredibly challenging. Um, and I'm not very good at it, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Um, but anytime that I've ever written anything, it's always guitar first for me. And then I'm filling in the other instruments around it. Uh, and again,
So
I don't write
it
lyrics, so
it's
there are none.
funny well, it's funny because for most of the songs that I've written, I don't I haven't written lyrics, but I have had, words or, something that I'm going for, like, I need to have some idea of what I want it to be before I start to write the song, you know? Like, I have to be thinking about what would the lyrics be about for this song or, like, what is the tone of this like what
Yeah.
or the topic of this song. I don't really like writing music that's just for music's sake. I like for it to be about something and to say something, but I do typically start with guitar parts and all of that. But I like to think like, okay, what do I want to say on this song, or like, what is the point of writing this song? Like, what is the purpose of it? And so like, on Resisting Vegas's Malevolent album, there's a song called The Evil Inside. I was literally going through horror movie monsters and I wanted to write a song about werewolves. And so that's what The Evil Inside is about. Then I wanted to write a song about a vampire, and that's what there's another song called Bloodlines. Like that's what that song's about. And so I didn't know what the exact lyrics were going to be, but I knew that when I was making that album, I wanted them to be like horror movie topics and lots of like horror elements. And so I was inspired by like classic horror monsters. And that was what I was thinking of when I wrote the songs. Like, what does a song for a vampire sound like? Like a metal song. So I have written some lyrics. I've actually helped out with lyrics in a lot of songs. But and I'm actually typically pretty decent at it. It's not something that I'm like super passionate about though. Uh, but yeah, it's there's just so many different ways to approach starting a song and writing it. And I think with a song like this, you have to have the lyrics first. Like you just have to. So that is surprising that he doesn't like that melody. That melody, I think that melody is great.
Well, that's why I thought it was so funny when you said that first. I was like, man, he like literally thinks this is one of the worst melodies he's ever written. And Cam is like, I love it.
Yeah, like I think it's really funny. You know, he can say that it's not a good melody, but I mean, how many choruses are there in this song? And it still doesn't really feel like it gets old, you know?
I think So I think an interesting take there is that we talked about this a little bit with the Ariana Grande episode. Like with pop music, it's more so like the lyrics that are really, I think, not the lyrics, but the vocal performance that's like
Hmm.
the driving force for the song. And I
Yeah.
feel like it's the same thing for this song because I would say that this song is definitely not a pop song at all, but I think it has some kind of pop-ish elements to it.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and kind of like how we were saying, like I feel like in instrumentally in a lot of pop songs, if they have instruments at all, it's not the instruments that stand out; it's the vocal performance. And I feel like this is the same thing, with the exception of maybe the drums.
Yeah,
And it's I don't even think that it's that
Mhm.
they stand out so much as it is that they're just kind of like jarring and don't go away, which I guess that is the definition of standing out.
Well,
But
I think maybe what you're saying is they're the driver of this song. They're the driving force of this song. Like this song is not being driven by the guitar or the drums. This song is
right,
being driven by the vocals.
yeah,
So they like it doesn't surprise me at all to hear that this was the first like the lyrics and vocals came first. Uh I just find it, when you think about like a great melody, you typically time and like listening to the melody and like the amount of times you hear it, and if the melody is really good, you typically don't like your opinion of it doesn't sour over time, you know? It's like, for example, like it's my turn to mention Event Sevenfold, like Afterlife, the Afterlife melody, like the chorus of it. That melody is great. It's still great. It's still as great as it was the first time I heard it. That's a great melody. I don't belong here. I've got to move on, dear. Like that's just good. And so when it's just good, you can get tired of it. You can get tired of listening to it, but time doesn't necessarily make it worse. It actually sometimes can make it better because you appreciate it even more. Like you appreciate how good it is because it still stood the test of time. So in this case, I find it very surprising that you can have this song like this with a melody that everybody knows. We didn't start the fire. It was always burning since the world's been turning. Like everyone knows that melody. Everyone can sing along with that song. And even in the song, he puts the chorus in five, six, seven, eight, nine times. And it doesn't really feel like it ever gets old, in my opinion. And I feel like this song, especially live, would just be awesome. So I think it's kind of interesting. Like, what even is a good melody in his mind? And I'm not saying like, I don't mean that in a dissing way. I actually mean that genuinely. Like, I would be very curious to hear what he actually thinks are good melodies and like what goes into it.
um, one, yes, okay, I think that would be a great like. I think almost having that conversation with almost any
Mhm.
artist is worth having, right?
Yeah,
Because obviously
that's
we
why I
all
like
have our
this.
different
That's why I like this podcast.
yeah. Because like even going back to how you start to write a song and how I start to write a song, like if when I'm just kind of messing around on guitar, every song that I've ever written has started from me messing around and like playing something that I liked, and I was kind of like, oh, okay, and then like expanding upon it, not really going in with the intentions of I want to write a song of like this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it does eventually evolve into that, but I don't have some big grand scheme of like I want to write a dark spooky song or I want to write a happy song. It's just like, oh, I played a couple notes and I liked how that sound, now let's build on it,
Hmm.
and then it'll turn into whatever it is. um I'm also not trying to write songs for lyrics like that will have lyrics over them either though.
Yeah, I
um
I think that and this is why I meant that genuinely. Like, I would love to hear what he has to say because he's a great songwriter and he's great with melodies too. Is because there is a part of like when I'm writing, it's kind of to riff off what you just said. Is like riff off of what you just said. When I first started writing songs, that's kind of what I did too. You just come up with something cool and you play it and you think that's a cool riff and then you turn that into a song, right?
yeah,
But over time, you know, how many riffs do you write before you finally say, okay, what actually makes this riff different from this other riff, or what makes this solo different from this other solo?
right,
And the conclusion that I think you ultimately come to is that it is the meaning behind it. That's the difference. Like what is this actually n- uh, the meaning behind it, but also like what is it a part of? So you can have
So
a great heavy riff, but is it just part of a generic heavy song, or is it part of maybe like a softer song that turned heavy, you know?
so I would see my counter argument point to make would be is I think it's more about like how it makes you feel versus like what's it a part of.
See, I think the feelings thing when you talk about like how a song makes or like what the purpose of art in a song is, I think feelings are great, but I think that there is much more to be found in like the actual intellectual stimulation of the art. Like what is it? What are you learning about the human experience? Um, cuz there's so many riffs and guitar parts out there that are just epic. And I mean like that's it. They're not no depth, there's no purpose to any of it, but they sound cool. And it's like, okay, but that's great. You sound really good. You're a great guitarist. You sound cool. But is there meaning behind any of it? Is there any, you know, what is this? Why should I care about this riff versus the other epic guitarist on my timeline or on my YouTube page, you know? And that's ultimately what it comes down to for me is like there's so much stuff that sounds good or sounds sad and it makes you feel something, but I think the stuff that really makes you feel something is the stuff that actually has deeper meanings to it and depth of like intellectual depth. That like I think this song is a perfect example of like that feeling of release that you get at the end of the song and on and on and on. You He earned it by putting in the work of putting all of these events together and phrasing them in a way that or framing them in a way and presenting them in a way that actually takes you on this journey. And so that feeling of exhaustion that you feel is a result of the actual intellectual hard work. Like he went into this with that purpose in my mind of putting all these events together and then saying at the end, I can't take it anymore. So I guess what I'm saying is the feeling is earned from the intellectual work. That's what I'm saying.
I mean I can get behind that as well. Specifically with this song, like he was again, it was very well thought out and intentional, and he had a game plan for the
Hmm.
most part, or at least had a start of an idea, and they just kind of, in his words, threw the music together for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
It's funny because, yeah, there's no like significant musical thing, but
yeah, and I mean, like, if you can just throw music together and come out with a number one hit single,
right. There'd be
um,
tons of them. No,
yeah,
I think that that's actually the feelings thing. I'm not trying to like dog feelings, but like the thing is I think so much of our music nowadays has tried to achieve that. Like we want music that makes us feel something, but that's the problem is that we don't like even if you look at the way our brains work, right? Like emotions and feelings are actually like I'm not like a neuroscientist or whatever, but from my understanding, they are uh chemical responses to like they're meant to inform our conscious brain of things that the conscious brain might not be aware of. I don't know if I'm like a hundred like for
I
example,
mean that's like a very Spark Notes dumbed down version.
well yeah, like again, I don't know I can't tell you about the thalamus, all right? Like I don't know how the thalamus works. But if you look at it, it's like why do we get angry when we're hungry? Well, because the anger is meant to be a motivator for us to go and hunt and find food and eat, you know? If we got sad when we were hungry, we might just sit in bed and then we die. And so it's like there's purposes behind the things that we feel, even like happiness. I've had this conversation and we might be getting way too philosophical here, but like I've
I was
had this
gonna say,
conversation with like happiness where like happiness is not an end state goal. Like people who say, oh, I just want to be happy in life, it's like, well, happiness doesn't really work like that. Happiness is like a reward for doing something that you should do. It's like I feel really happy every time an episode of this podcast comes out. I'm not making this podcast to feel happy. I feel the happiness because this podcast is a fulfilling thing to do, and the happiness is rewarding me for doing it. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah.
And again, I'm not a neuroscientist, but from what I know of emotions, I'm almost certain that's how it works. Like they serve a function for our survival. So to bring it back down to earth and bring it back down to music, the when we talk about like, oh, I want music that makes me feel something, or like I'm dissatisfied by the music that I feel or that I listen to. Like it doesn't make me feel anything. It's like, well, because the best songs have that intellectual depth that captures like the human experience. You know, it's not trying to cheat you. It's not trying to like short sell you on an emotional reaction. You know, it's not trying to like pull that out of you. It's actually giving you something that you can relate to, you know, both intellectually but also emotionally and metaphysically or whatever you want to think. You know, I think the last time a song genuinely made me like tear up was Cosmic by Avenged Sevenfold. And it's because there's so much work and depth to that song, you know? And so anyway, I think that that's how you get the emotional reaction is through the work. So, yeah,
Yeah, I can get behind that. Um, for sure. And yes, Cosmic, great song by
great song.
Avenged Sevenfold.
We're definitely going to do that at some point. But yeah,
That's gonna
anyway,
be, yeah.
that'll be a
Um,
big episode. So,
yeah. Um, the
okay.
to kind of bring it back to how you're talking about like what standards are for good melody for Billy Joel. I mean, the answer there is I think you just gotta go listen to more Billy Joel to see what else he's got out there, you know.
Fair enough.
Because like I said, like we didn't start the fires. When I think of Billy Joel, that's not like that's way on the list of like the songs I think of when I think of Billy Joel. For me personally.
Yeah. Well, this song is also like I feel like this song is kind of like a movie. You know, you're not supposed to listen to it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I can get behind that.
Yeah, so it's cool. But okay, cool. Let me give my last few notes. I have a few before I get into like my little song analysis template. I did have
Yeah.
just a few notes here. I by the end of this song, I think that you are both. I think I said this already. You're both exhausted, but also like amped up. I think that's very intentional, and it does a good job of doing it. I think my biggest critiques are that the song could use. I haven't talked about this yet, but I do think one of my biggest critiques is that the song could use a little bit more differentiation um, structurally. I think it does a great job, but it's funny after I wrote that note, but after going through the song with you, I think I'm just going to take that back. I actually like the structure of the song and noticing all of the little things that he did to keep it interesting. Like I didn't realize that the fourth verse was only 6 lines. So yeah, I take that back. I actually am happy with the song structure. I think it's really cool, and I don't think that if he had added a guitar solo or something into it somewhere, or a bridge or something, I don't think it would have benefited the song.
Yeah. I think it would have made it awkward.
Yeah, I think it would have messed with the pacing. It's already a very weirdly paced song, so yeah, I will take back that critique. But yeah, my other critique was that the references are just a little bit outdated, and it's hard to relate to if you didn't grow up in that era. So I think that will affect the timelessness of the song. But hey, if Fall Out Boy keeps making new versions, then I guess we're good. So
Yeah.
um,
Well,
all
every
right,
like every 30, 40 years, we'll just somebody needs to redo it.
yeah, right. It's funny that might actually be a thing that happens. I wouldn't be
Yeah,
surprised.
we'll have this conversation again when we're on episode like 2000
3000.
and we're like 60 years old. Like, well,
Yeah.
Graham, they did it again. Part
They
three.
did it. They did it again. um okay, cool. Let me go through my template or my song analysis template here, my notes, and
Yeah,
then
I was gonna
we
say,
can wrap up.
but maybe it'll be written by AI.
Oh god.
Okay.
we the, we definitely didn't start the fire, but we ended it. Okay, cool. So let's knock this out. The purpose of this song was I think he wanted to capture and reflect on the insanity of humanity as a whole. I think when he wrote this, I think that there was a part of him that was probably very frustrated or had wanted to somehow show this song
I
just Whoa.
I can speak to this a little bit actually, because it was part of my research. So basically, it was him and some person. Hold on, let me see if I can pull it up again really quickly. Uh, he met a friend that was 21, a 21-year-old friend, Sean Lennon, who said it was a terrible time to be 21. And Joel was like, "Yeah, I remember when I was 21 and thought it was an awful time." And we had like he just lists things that were happening: Civil War, or not
Mhm.
Civil War, civil rights problems, drug problems in Vietnam, and everything was
Mhm.
awful. And then the friend was like, "Well, like, yeah, 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 but it's different for you. You were a kid in the 50s, and everybody knows that nothing happened in the 50s." And then Joel was like, "Hold up a minute. Did you hear about the Korean War and the Suez Canal crisis?" And like, so then he's like, "I'm gonna write a song," and then he did.
So that's actually perfect. That's great. And so yeah, I think I got pretty close here. But so his goal was to show that like all these things that are crazy, like they always go on. It's always like that. It never ends. And so yeah, I think that was the purpose, was to capture that, just the insanity of humanity and humanity insanity. So yeah, that is the purpose, and he nailed it. I think he absolutely nailed that. The genre style, it is definitely a rock song in my opinion, but it's very much got pop influences. Um, but I would not consider this a pop song at all. It's actually very surprising. Like I said, I don't think that it's I'm not surprised that people like this song. I'm surprised that this song got popular. So yeah. Regarding the song structure, it is actually surprisingly intricate. It's just a back and forth between the verses and choruses, but there's these little breaks and changes and things that he adds to keep it interesting, and keep it from getting stale. And I did have a note about it needing more differentiation, but I don't think so. I think he actually totally nailed the song structure. So props to him. Super cool, super unique song structure. No bridge, no interludes, no solos or anything. Just verse chorus verse chorus verse chorus verse chorus, just over and over again. Composition, there is an awesome build up throughout this whole song. The whole song is just constantly building the tension of all of these events. When you compare the first verse to the fifth verse, there's a huge difference musically. I don't know if you've ever done that, Aubrey, but maybe when you get the chance, just listen to the first verse and then fast forward to the fifth verse and hear how different the music is. We go from this very empty, open sound to just full chaos, percussion, guitar, all of that. Um, all of the instruments sound really cool. They sound great. I didn't mention this, but there's also like extra bells and things happening in the chorus that add to the zaniness and craziness. Um, he I think his melodies in the verses, like his vocal melodies, are a little bit underrated. It's really hard to do something like this and keep it engaging and interesting, but I think he nailed it. The percussion, I think, was my favorite part. The percussion's super cool, and it is like the perfect little motif for such a zany song like this. And then the guitar parts are super cool too. Ambient, you can't really even hear them, but that's kind of how it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to. They're not the forefront. So yeah, in terms of the composition of everything, really good. The mix is actually, it's a pretty normal mix, but that's an impressive statement considering everything that's going on throughout this song, uh, and the scope of this song. Especially by the time you get to the end, the song feels very huge and overwhelming, but it's not aggravating to listen to. It's a nice mix of like big and epic, but also like still right in your face as he's yelling this stuff out, and the song topics and stuff, or the events and things in the verses. Ooh, all right, taking a little water. Um, okay, lyrical content. Uh, the lyrical content is there's the chorus, and then there is a list of headlines and events. I actually think the song was very versatile, like surprisingly versatile at encompassing all, like humanity as a whole and all the things we go through. And there's a lot of research done for it, but they are all tied to the 80s era, which I think is kind of it does seem to date the song just a little bit. But overall, lyrical content is really cool. The theme is that humanity is insane and the drama and craziness has already always been here. Um, and so yeah, this song is about sort of like we said, you can interpret it many different ways, but the theme is that that is the state of the world, that is how things are, and it's always going to be like that, and it always has been like that. And to whatever extent you want, whether it's letting it go, accepting it, or embracing it, you need to sort of acknowledge at least that this is how things are. So yeah, and I think that's something that everyone can relate to. It's a really solid theme about you know the world and how it is, and so I think I've got that theme right. I want to make sure. I've been trying to work on getting the themes a little bit better, but yeah, anyway, my final verdict was like, it's a great song. It captures the craziness and it puts the listener through it rather than telling them about it. You could have easily started the song off by saying the world's been crazy for as long as I've been alive and it'll be crazy for you. It's like, that's dumb. That's a uncreative way to do it. The way he did it was way better. Super cool, very artistic song, and I like it a lot. So there we go.
I think the only thing that I would kind of butt heads with you here, Cam, is when you say it's all tied to the '80s era. I think a better. I get what you're trying to say. I think it's better to say it's linked or locked into a specific time frame. I just feel like saying it's the '80s era, saying he's just referencing things in the '80s, where he's literally referencing things that have happened from his birth year until the year '89.
I think you are 100% correct. Um, yeah, I won't butt heads with you on that. I think I just put 80s there. But yeah, he is referencing because he literally is referencing events from what is it, 1949 to 1989. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's just a typo on my part in my notes. But yeah, it is. But I think my point to some extent still stands in that these are some of these references will be a little bit dated.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. You can't listen to the song in like 50 years. I mean, like you know, and have it like the same feeling. I think
but
kind of like a funny experiment would be. I don't know if you've listened to the Fallout Boy version,
no,
um, because I don't really feel like we can. I don't even want to say relate, but really begin to have an understanding of like an emotional impact for a lot of the things he's saying
yeah,
in the song until he gets to his last verse. Um,
yes,
and we, you know, we're 94 babies, so we understand some of the things that happened and are a little bit more up on the events of the things that happened in the last bit of his
yeah.
song.
Definitely. Those are definitely like the events that I know more about. I don't know anything about, you know, Brando, The King and I,
Yeah.
England's yeah, I yeah. So yeah, I would agree with you there. And I it's funny because hearing the background like of this song and what inspired him to write it, I think is maybe my other critique was that these references can be dated, but hearing that background actually kind of might even change my opinion on that. I mean, like to an extent, I don't want to judge the song based on outside information. I want to judge the song based on the song.
Right.
But uh, you know, when the point of the song was to explain to a younger person that these crazy events have always been going on, just in case, you know, like just so the younger people understand that um it actually kind of can help that that some of these references are dated or that people might not get them because then you can look them up and you can read. I learned about thalidomide or whatever, thalidomine or something. And let me get the word right. Hold on. What was it? I can't say I learned about it and then not know it. uh yeah, thalidomide. That's something I had never heard of. I didn't know about that. And so there is an element of like, okay, this might be dated, but also the point of the song is to make you aware that this craziness has always been happening. So it, you know, this song could be a historical text. Like, so anyway, okay. Well, I think that's all that I've got for it. I think, unless you got anything else,
Nope. That's all I got.
we did it. We made it through. This is by far our longest episode.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
I think
we're
this
we're
is
sitting.
also our longest song. Ironically. Not, well, I
Yes,
guess not ironically, but
coincidentally.
yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, let's see. Do you have any ideas for next week's show?
Um, well,
Mm,
there were kind of two things that kind of came to mind to me. I was thinking about
mhm,
this today, and it was one. So we kind of did a song that you and I didn't like. Then we did a song that the artist didn't like, and I kind of got this idea while searching for songs that artists didn't like. We could go with a song that like was critically hated by everybody.
yeah.
um, or I thought maybe we could talk about how like we write. This would kind of be branching off from talking about just songs in general, but just kind of
Mhm,
talking about some of our thought process. And we kind of did this a little bit here, but a little bit of a deeper dive about
mhm.
how we write music and kind of our brains and how we, uh,
I like music, the process of writing music just in general.
yeah. Uh, but I
That could be
don't.
fun.
We can definitely. My concern there would be that one. I think it'd be interesting because we have very different approaches.
Mhm.
Um, but I think mine would be a very simple explanation and wouldn't take up a lot of time, which isn't bad.
Yeah.
um, I just don't know that I would have a lot to say that was really interesting.
Well,
I think.
I think
Go
I
ahead.
think that maybe that's just something kind of like we did with this one where we can flesh it out. We can flesh the idea out. Um, because yeah, I think that that would be pretty solid. That's a solid topic to like. Let's talk about what actually goes into making like starting to write a song. Like, what
Yeah.
are things that you can do and ways that you can go about that. Yeah, no, I'd be down for that. I'll try to think if I've got any ideas too.
Yeah. Well, I know that we have also talked about covering other topics as well, and and trying to get some shorter things
Mhm.
out there. So that might be
Yeah,
a good
definitely.
example.
Okay. Yeah, that would be cool. I would be down. Um, all right, but yeah, we'll discuss it offline. Uh, but for now, I think that that is a wrap on We Didn't Start the Fire.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, again, everybody, be sure to go and follow us on our socials and on Spotify. We are just at Simple Songwriting on YouTube and Instagram. And yeah, be sure to subscribe and all of that good stuff. And then hit them with the Roman goodbye. Voile. We should look up the Greek
Wale.
goodbye. Wait, what's the Greek goodbye?
Hold please. I don't know that I'm gonna have. Oh,
Antiosas.
but is that Greek like current day Greek or is that like old timey Greek?
I don't know.
I don't know either. Find out next week.
Find out next week. All right, we'll still do the Roman one. Okay. Voile, everybody. Voile,
Wale.
voile.